I picked up embroidery many years ago now, 8-ish. And after diving hardcore into your basic sort of hand embroidery, I pretty quickly found myself wanting to explore other styles. There are so many different types or techniques of decorative hand stitching that either fall within the category of embroidery or are sort of parallel to it. I have a whole list, and I have been working my way through it slowly because embroidery is a very slow art form. And that's been going on since way back at the start of my channel. Some of my first project vlog style videos rather than tutorials, actually literally the first ones, were explorations of needle lace, which is technically an embroidery style because it's done with a needle, and cross stitch. So I thought a compilation of all of the embroidery explorations I've done so far would be super fun. But here's the thing, those very earliest ones are not available. Basically, I can't repost them. It's like a music licensing thing. Therefore, we are gonna start this group of delightful stitching videos with something that doesn't super duper feel like an embroidery exploration, but it kinda sorta really is. I made a whole giant rug, or basically like a giant doily, using blanket yarn and Armenian needle lace techniques. And you know what? It is still one of my favorite early projects and videos. There's a lot of puppy in it. So as you can see, it's a pretty nice size. It's starting to actually look like a rug. What is that? Hi there. Oh, am I boring you already? You're beautiful and I love you. So despite the fact that I am quite busy right now and I have several videos to edit and, you know, projects I'm already working on and a more than full-time job at the moment, I thought, hey, you know what? I have 30 minutes of free time, so how about I start something new? What you doing back there? This is one that I got the idea for quite a while ago, and I've just been putting off getting into it because I'm not entirely sure it's gonna work. But I finally bought the supplies the other day. That's what all of this yarn is for. It is for this project. Hi, you wanna sniff those now? Oh, I almost took out my microphone. 4 skeins of blanket extra. Oh, just stick your nose right in there. Was that a good little nose spot for your snoot? I can like visualize what this project will look like in the end, but I have absolutely no basis for whether it will get there. I could be entirely wrong. So I have no idea how much yarn I was gonna need. So I got 4. If I use all of it, it'll be almost 400 yards of yarn. But what is the project, you ask? Because you haven't said, although I'm sure it's in the title of this video. Oh my god, I can't stand my hair being down. So in the past, you may have seen that I made a video about needle lace, and then I made another video about needle lace styles from around the world, in which I did a bunch of research and tried out a bunch of styles from all over the place, and the one that I really fell in love with was Armenian needle lace, which, yeah, I'm still working on that piece to this day. And it hasn't gotten all that much bigger. Shortly after I did that video, I was thinking, what would happen if you did Armenian needle lace with something giant, like a big ol' blanket yarn? Would it be big enough to be considered a rug? There's a lot of variables here that I have not thought through or practiced, and I do not know if they'll work whatsoever. The first being, it is needle lace, which means you need a needle in order to do it. And this is quite thick stuff. So, don't think there's a needle this will fit through. I did buy the biggest needles I could find at the craft store. These are for Super Jumbo Tapestry Needle Set. For eyelash and super bulky yarn. I mean, this is super bulky yarn. If I can get this through this giant plastic needle, oh, it goes through so easily. All right, you know what? I had this whole backup plan involving skewers and tape. unnecessary because this works. I basically thought I would start this today because I think this is going to take me a while. I mean, this one has been worked on quite a bit and it's not that big. I'm assuming the change in yarn size will make a giant difference in how long this takes me to make, but I'm also assuming that it will still take quite a while. So I'm going to use the exact same method that you would use. I'm literally changing nothing, which means the very center I'll make by wrapping the end of a cut piece of yarn around my finger to make this little X, and then sliding the needle underneath that X. Then you take your working cord, wrap it around the needle, and pull through to make a knot. Then I'll do the exact same thing. And now I have a little loop of thread, like a petal. And that's basically it. That's how you make the entire thing. You can either cross over with your cord like this, or you can wrap around this way. You can double knot it by wrapping around twice, but like that is the basic concept of how you do Armenian needle lace. And regardless of the giant needle and the giant cord, I don't think it should be any different. So we're gonna go for it. And I'm assuming many time lapses will be filling the rest of this video because there is nothing fast about this. Okay, so I just wanted to give some first thoughts on the process now that I've gotten a little way into it. This far into it, to be exact. This yarn is really soft. First up, the whole process is a little more aggressive than normal. Like when I'm pulling the yarn through, you have to really yank on it. I think just because there's so much texture to it that it gets kind of stuck on itself, or there's just a lot more friction. It's not quite as relaxing of a process to make this as needle lace normally would be. There's a lot more dramatic yankage. The second thing I would say is it's working, and it's working great. Some things feel kind of different doing it with this big yarn, and the big one is adding a new piece. So with needle lace, if you don't know, you work with sections of your yarn or cord or whatever you're using. It's not like knitting or crocheting. Here you have to cut a length of yarn, use that length, and then cut a new length and tie that new length in. So normally what you would do is you would do that initial knot, and then this tail you would continue working into the next several loops, just so it's like extremely secure. It has several knots in it, and it's definitely not going to come undone. So I haven't been doing that. I've just been tying that initial knot and then cutting off the ends. So far that seems fine. Like, I don't see anything that's coming undone. How long this will last, only time will tell. It took a lot longer for me to get into like the rhythm, I guess, of needle lace with this yarn because it blends into itself so much you can't tell what's what anymore. So when I tighten a knot like this one here, I basically, before it's even fully tight, I can't tell the difference between the different pieces of cord anymore. So I can't tell like what's this end of the cord and what's this end of the cord. It just goes into a ball of fluff. So it's a lot harder to then make these loops the exact size that I want them to be and make the knot fall exactly where I want it to be. Where it falls is where it's gonna go, and you better be happy with it. But I'm getting better at that, especially just using the needle to kind of pull at it and go different ways. I've only broken the yarn once. I kind of expected it to happen more often with how hard I'm yanking on it, but it hasn't been happening. There was just one time that I yanked on it and it was done. And then a big thing that I'm doing is every time I'm not working on this, I'm making sure to lay it down flat and like push it out and make sure that it's still laying flat. Because the normal piece that I'm doing, the purple one, it's very wavy at this point, and I'm honestly not sure if I'll ever be able to get it to lay fully flat again. To be good at Armenian needle lace, like, there's a lot of precision involved. Clearly, I'm not doing it that well on the purple piece. And on this one, you can see if I like hang it up, it doesn't necessarily want to fall exactly right. But the joy of it being the giant yarn like this is that every time I lay it down flat, it basically flattens out just fine. Also, this is still the first ball of yarn. I've barely made a dent on it, and it's already this big. So I don't know that I'll need 400 yards of yarn. This itself, this initial piece, was pretty fast to make and did not use all that much cord, and kind of reminds me of a beret. I wonder if I like cinched in the edges, if I could wear this as a beret. Soup stylish. I was originally imagining making sort of a small, cutesy sort of rug. Can't fit both my arms in the frame. Like this big in diameter. Hi! At this point, I'm wondering if this is gonna end up being a giant-ass rug that will cover the entirety of my living room floor, which granted still isn't that big, but you know, we'll see what happens. There's already fur all over it. Can you go away? Have you come to make your appearance? Okay, so I wanted to check in because I have finished the entire first skein of yarn, so 97 yards. God, that sounds like a lot. 97 yards minus, whatever is in here. So, you know, I'll be generous and say 95 yards have gone into this. Sure. So this is what it looks like right now. This is basically the size I was originally gonna make it because I was just gonna do like a little area rug. And this is just the one skein of yarn. So if you're looking to make just, you know, a little accent rug, not an area rug, area rugs are big, you can do it with just one skein of yarn. I did the mountain design here, which I've done before in crochet thread, but honestly, it looks way better like this. Maybe I never did it quite right, and now I finally did. I am very happy with all of these little triangles. Oh my God, there's so much dog fur on this entire thing. It's getting to the point that I have to lay this out on like the carpet in order to make sure that it's laying flat and I'm not pulling anything too tight or leaving it too loose. And despite the fact that I vacuumed yesterday before laying it down, there's still dog fur all over it. Am I surprised? Not really. How big is this anyway? Sure, that seems like the diameter. This is very unprecise measuring. It's 1 yard in diameter right now. Yeah, that looks about 1 yard. I think that's right. A yard in diameter out of one skein of yarn seems pretty darn good for me. So I have the 3 more skeins. Of course, I'm not gonna leave it this size anymore. I'm gonna go much bigger because why the heck not? And of course, the next skein of yarn is not going to double the size. I know how math works, kind of. I wouldn't be surprised if the entire next skein of yarn only adds about 6 inches on each side of this. I don't really know what design I'm gonna keep doing. I wanna try some different things. So I looked up how to do one called Hugging Friends. I might try to do that. So that's about it. Despite all the gaps in it, it still makes a pretty cuddly blanket. Okay, I am checking in on this project, but I couldn't be bothered to get out my full equipment, so sorry if the sound sucks. I have just finished the second spool of yarn, which means there's now approximately, I forgot how to do math, 190 yards? Yes, that is how math works. Let's see how big it is. So Link obviously likes it. Not that he's very picky about what he likes. I ran out of the second spool right here, which was actually like really perfect because it was the end of the pattern I was doing. I did 3 rows of like a basic seed stitch, and then I did what's called butterfly stitch. I don't know, I still don't know what you're supposed to call these. And then I did 3 more rows of the regular tight seed stitch, which I think kind of anchors things, so I like to do it in between more holy sections. And this is a good time to note that I'm going entirely off of the lessons of basically one person on YouTube because I am not from Armenia. I do not speak Armenian, and the only way I know anything about Armenian needle lace is through one lovely YouTuber who I will link in the description below because she has great videos in English on how to do Armenian needle lace. One last thing I want to see is how much bigger this has gotten now with the addition of another 95 yards. I'm also really glad to see that when I laid this out on the ground, it is falling pretty naturally and not puckering or anything, because my whole plan to like consistently lay it out flat and make sure that it was okay pretty much died on this second spool. I don't think I've laid it out flat once since I finished the first one. So, oh look, now you can see the full thing. Thanks for moving. Okay, so we're currently at 4 feet across. I'm getting more used to all of the motions of this, and now it's starting to be like really easy. All is going well. Behold the conquering hero. 3 skeins are now done. I only have 1 more to go. The Hugging Friends pattern on the outside here, basically I did too many of them. I didn't squish them together. I made the space in between each of them bigger than it should have been. So the outside is ruffling because of that, which, like, lesson learned for next time. I should have laid it flat like I said I would. I don't really mind. It's not bothering me that much. I have a feeling that the last skein of yarn is going to add very, very little to the outside of this. Do you want to get measured? Your head is 7 inches long. Yeah. Last thing is to see how big it is. How much have I added? And we are coming in at 58 inches across, almost 5 feet. Do you own it because your paws are on it? Are you so pretty? It's done! Do you like it? He likes it a lot. All 380 yards of yarn, all 4 skeins, complete. So I finished this yesterday. I actually just pulled out the last skein of yarn that I hadn't even touched yet, and I was just going to work on it a little bit, you know, hadn't touched it for a few days, so I was like, ugh, I should really finish this. And then I ended up using the entire 95 yards in that one day yesterday. I had planned to do 2 small rows, 2 medium rows, 2 big rows, 2 medium, 2 small, and I got all the way up to, I finished the second 2 mediums. So I did 2 small, 2 medium, 2 large, 2 medium, and then I started doing the 2 rows of small. I don't think I even finished the first row of that when I ran out of yarn. I haven't honestly checked, but I'm pretty sure I was like 3/4 of the way around the circle with the small seed stitch that I was gonna do to finish it off. So technically the edge is not even and complete with my design, but I don't really care. I quite like it. It's very soft, it's quite lovely, it looks like a giant doily, but like the yarn itself is so soft, which is I think why this little one absolutely loves it. Every time I put it on the floor, he comes and lays on top of it immediately, so dogs approve. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that I gave this a try, and if you also would like to give the same thing a try, I highly recommend it. It became a pretty relaxing habit after a while once I got used to sort of the more aggressive yanking of yarn, and it became more of a rhythm. It really was a very relaxing habit. Like yesterday was a very relaxing day because I basically did this for 6 hours and it was quite nice. So if you're looking for something a little unusual as a new crafting idea, I highly recommend giving this a try. If you want some tutorials on Armenian needle lace, do check out Ashley from Become Inspired, who I've linked below. That's where I got all of my tutorials and where I learned how to do this. It is not a hard artwork to at least competently accomplish. I wouldn't say master. I mean, I have not mastered it. The edge is all roughly because I couldn't be bothered to make all my stuff the proper size. Like, mastering it is another level, but it's really easy to give a try, and it's really satisfying when you bump it up to a giant yarn. So, when in doubt, do it bigger. As ever, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing and following along. There will be many more project vlogs in the near future or far future. I don't know. Who really knows? My schedule is crazy and I just like to make stuff. Okay, and with that, I think I'm gonna possibly take a nap with the puppy on the rug. I have been asked a few times how that rug would best be cleaned, and I have no answer. Maybe very gently with warm water in a tub, kind of the way that you would wash and block a hand-knit sweater. I have never washed it because I realized pretty shortly after making it that it simply does not function very well as a rug. It would work better as a blanket, especially if I had made fewer big holes in it, But on the floor, oh, it is a tripping hazard, y'all. Your toes get caught in the little spaces between the yarn and chaos ensues. So that whole fluffy chunk is actually just rolled up in a closet right now, but as with 99% of my projects, the joy was in making it, not having it. It's fine. I'll let you in on a secret future project that's been on my list for ages though. I really want to use the needle lace techniques to make a parasol. I've seen people make crochet parasols and they're gorgeous, but I don't know how to crochet. So, needle lace, I think it would work. I even managed to find a parasol kit that has like the base structure and stuff. We'll get to it eventually. Anyway, my next embroidery exploration came pretty shortly after I started sewing clothing. Crewel embroidery has always been like top of the list favorite styles of mine, probably because it's like an explosion of texture and color. So I decided to give it a try on one of my very first handmade skirts. Little note, you are about to hear me say Jacobean instead of Jacobean or Jacobean numerous times. Trust me when I say I have been corrected. Why come up with a new embroidery design when you can pilfer one from a medieval Welsh castle? Let's get cruel. And that's cruel, not cruel. Why is it called that? Well, I looked up the etymology of the word and that gave me not much to go on. The most that I could find in my very limited research is that it might be related to the Old English word clue, which might refer to a ball of yarn. But what makes something cruel? That I can answer. Cruel is most often associated with or assumed to be a specific design style of embroidery from the Jacobean era that features a lot of birds and flowers and leaves, and most commonly a tree of life design. But actually, it doesn't have anything to do with a specific style or design or combination of stitches. It's all about the materials. The definition of traditional crewel work or crewel embroidery is embroidery done with worsted wool, most commonly on linen. And that's it. It doesn't matter what stitches you do or what design you do. The reason it's so often assumed to be this specific design style is that crewel embroidery was most popular in England during the 17th and 18th centuries. You'll often hear it called Jacobean crewel work, but the Jacobean era was only 1605 to 1625, so honestly, I'm not sure why it's so associated with that one time period when it was really popular for hundreds of years and even carried over to New England where it was very commonly used. Maybe I'm assuming that that was like the peak of its popularity. Anyway, that's really enough history from me, a non-historian, so let me get to the point. I'm gonna make some crewel. There is an incredibly handy book available for free online from Project Gutenberg, which I will link in the description. It has patterns and drawings of original embroidery from hundreds of years ago, along with descriptions of what stitches and colors were used when they were able to find that, which is like amazing information. Stuff like this just, it warms my heart. I've actually sewn a couple of these patterns before, back when I first delved into crewel work and the sort of Jacobean style of embroidery. But right now I am in the middle of making a skirt, and that's a whole other project video that will be coming out sometime later, I don't know. And I wanted to add some embroidery panels under the pockets on the front of the skirt. Now here's the deal, I really wanted to do this as legit as possible. Like the fabric is gonna be what the fabric is because it's a skirt I'm already making, it's not linen, it's just something that I found at Goodwill. But I wanted to actually use one of these traditional real designs of old and do it with wool yarn, which is something I haven't tried before. I even went and bought every shade of blue and green tapestry wool that I could find at Michael's. But this is the fabric. It's cheap, it's polyester, it is very tightly woven. I had trouble getting pins through it when I was trying to see what the pattern of the skirt would be, and I cannot sew with wool on this fabric. It would shred it to bits and make a giant mess and basically be pointless. So I am stepping back a bit. At least now I have wool and I can get myself a good piece of linen in the future and do this all over again properly. For now, this will be really good practice. So I'm gonna end up stitching with regular
cotton embroidery floss and cotton purl, which I think really imitates the size and texture of wool floss better. But I'm still doing the very old pattern. So I went through all of the plates trying to decide what would be the best pattern for this, because it needs to be like 2 panels or strips of embroidery that are going right here on the fabric, not like just a random flower or leaf. There are 2 that kind of stood out to me. The first is this one, which is from the Tudor era, and that's about all the information they had on it. It kind of just stood out because it's already in a handy dandy panel. I'm leaning towards this one though, which is from a bed hanging at Powys Castle, owned by the Earl of Powys. Powys? Is that how you would say that? And let's pause for a moment to appreciate the fact that this is Powys Castle. It's in Wales. It has amazing gardens. I want to visit so bad. I saw a lot of incredible castles during my time in Scotland and England, but unfortunately I never made it over to Wales. So yeah, this place is going on my list. Anyway, they didn't really have any information on the date of this pattern itself or the bed hanging or anything. If I went to visit the castle, maybe they would have it there. Research trip? But the castle itself was built in the mid 13th century by a Welsh prince whose name I really should not butcher, but I'm gonna try anyway. Gruffudd ap Gwynwynwyn. Side note, I'm pretty sure our family has Welsh roots on my mother's side. Could you tell from my fabulous pronunciation of that name? All that to say, I do think I'm gonna stick with this design, especially because they did have a few notes on the stitches and the colors that were used for this, so I can try to stick to those as well and be a little bit more authentic. Apparently, it was done in 4 shades of wool floss, which is good because I have green, and I think green would actually look really good on the sort of beigey fabric of the skirt. They mentioned that the outlines were done with rope stitch and that the big stems here with the sections in them were done in all 4 colors of green in Cretan stitch. Now, neither of those seems super viable, especially when I consider if I had done it in actual wool. Like, I don't know if rope stitch is something different for them than it is for me, but it's a fairly thick line of stitches, and if you did that even in cotton purl, it's gonna be pretty big. I think maybe it'll work for the contours. I mean, I'll make it work. But then Cretan stitch, like, you can do it in a closed form, so it's more of a fill stitch, but it's not exactly a squared off shape. So I don't really know how they got it to fill up all of these little rectangles, much less like why. Why would you use Cretan stitch? Possibly the answer to my quandaries is that bed hangings are pretty big, and the embroidery that went on them was also really big. Exhibit A and B. So I look at these patterns and imagine them being about the size I'm seeing on the screen, but no, they were actually quite huge, which makes sewing all of what looks like tiny details with a wool yarn actually work. But I'm kind of stuck on the size because, again, it's a skirt. I can't make it any bigger than it is, but I'll do my best. I'm going to select the areas of this pattern that I want to do so I can kind of get it into a panel shape. And then I must undergo the challenge of tracing it onto my fabric, which I have a feeling I won't be able to see through because in its previous life, it was a curtain and it's full of black threads. I am beginning to question the sanity and purpose of this project. Okay, so I've run into the first of what I anticipate to be several challenges, namely that I now have to get my pattern onto the fabric. Overall, I'm really pleased with this. I'm really excited to sew it, actually. I think it's gonna take me a pretty long time. But yeah, I tested the fabric, and as I suspected, it's curtain fabric and you can't see through it at all, period. There's a few options for how I could get this design traced on. None of them are ideal. I have this tracing paper, which works. I tested it on the fabric right there, and it does show up on the fabric fine. My biggest concern is that it doesn't really come off afterwards. So this spot right here is where I tried to like rinse some out, and it just kind of smeared around and made a blob. The other option would be tracing it onto some interfacing of some sort and using the interfacing on top of the fabric. And I've seen people do embroidery like this. I've never personally tried it because I've never had a need to, really. I don't tend to sew on dark colored fabrics very much. So I gave that a little test here too. I just put a tiny piece on the fabric, sewed a few random stitches over it, and then started tearing it away. The reason I don't like tear away stabilizer is because it doesn't actually tear that easily, and it puts a lot of pressure on your embroidery stitches, so this is also not a great plan. But I do have one other idea that's going to take much longer because it'll involve another whole step of the process. If I trace onto the interfacing, put that on my fabric, and then basically go over the entire design with a thin running stitch, I can then go back and cut the tearaway stuff off very easily because there's very little holding it down, and then use my outline stitches as my guide to actually fill in the pattern. In general, it doesn't seem like a super easy cut and dry plan, but at the same time, I think it's the only way to get this pattern onto this fabric because I've basically just shot myself in the foot with this fabric. That's what I'm gonna go try. All right, I wanted to update again really quickly before the end of the day because from here on out, I'm pretty much just gonna be sewing for a long time. This method that I thought maybe would work appears to be working. I was really concerned that I would need to recut out these panels of fabric because when I was cutting out the skirt yesterday, I immediately forgot that I wasn't supposed to actually cut out the two panels that were getting embroidery on them. I was supposed to trace them onto fabric and leave all that extra fabric on the sides so that I could frame it properly. Luckily, this fabric is very non-stretch, so it's not a huge deal that it's not being pulled on all four sides. I think it'll be okay. Here's hoping. I won't bore you with the details. I guess cue all the time lapses because this is gonna be like a couple weeks of a project. Good times. All right, so I'm already kind of thinking this wasn't the greatest idea. Big surprise. So all of yesterday was spent sewing the running stitch outline, which is fine. It's fine. You know what I'm wondering now? This interfacing that I was using is very holy, And at one point I was just putting it over my finger to like draw a line that I had missed on it, and the pin marks went through onto my finger. So is there a possibility that I could have traced it onto the interfacing, put the interfacing on top of the fabric, and then retraced over it on the fabric, and the marks would have just gone through the interfacing onto the fabric?
Hooray!
I may have wasted hours and hours and hours yesterday. Oh well, this is how we live and learn. I'm gonna have to go test that right now because it's plaguing my brain. Time to find out if I wasted all my time. Yo, it does. It does. It goes straight through. It creates a lovely, easy, nice line. I could have just done that. I mean, what can I say? I'm always happy to figure something out. I wish I had figured it out before spending all of yesterday doing pointless things. This begs the question though, what do I do with this? Here's my thought. When in doubt, set it aside. So I am going to take this out of the frame, fold it up, and set it aside for a hot second, and then I'm gonna start over on the second panel. And then depending on how that process goes, how it turns out, I'll inform my decision on what I'm gonna do with this poor baby. For this next one, I also need to flip the pattern. Hi. Okay, let's go do stuff. Let's do this. Moment of truth. Ta-da! That's not bad at all. So that versus that. I'll take that. It was way faster. So basically I just did in like less than an hour what I spent about 8 hours doing yesterday. Why? All right, so I got everything traced in here much better, made sure that you could see all the lines. I added all of the lines to the inside of the stems to turn it into blocks, which is, you know, exciting because I have to figure out how to put Cretan stitch in there. So basically each of these squares is like alternating colors of green in Cretan stitch done separately. The other stitch they gave me was rope stitch for all of the contours or outlines, which is all of these around the leaves. So those are the only two stitches that they gave me in the document. So the other ones I'm just gonna have to come up with, and I wanna use ones that I've seen talked about on other plates so that it's kind of sticking in that world of the traditional crewel stitches. Stem stitch is a big one, so I'll probably use that on the stems themselves. For the round balls, I'm either going to do Palestrina stitch or coral stitch, one of the things that's like a line of stitches with knots in it. And then for the thinner ones, I'll probably just do like a single stitch in the center and then do French knots around. The only other thing on here is these little curly cues, which I will just do in back stitch because what else would I use? All right, so that is basically it. Those are my colors. Those are the stitches that I'm gonna be using. Oh, let's get stitching. Oh God, I'm stuck. One down, one more to go. Actually, this didn't take too long comparatively. I haven't been able to devote long hours to it, so I think it only took me about a week to finish one panel, which isn't that bad. The green on the beige I think is actually really nice. And the blocked out Cretan stitch, it really did work, and it's pretty cool looking. I very quickly ran out of my pearl cotton floss because this takes quite a bit, and I had less than one whole skein of each color. Had to go to 2 stores to get more of all 3 colors because, of course, one store only had 2 of the colors, the other store only had 2 of the colors. Thank God that together they had all of them, or I would have had to go to 3 stores. So I just bought a buttload, so there's no chance of me running out again. The weave actually wasn't a problem at all. What was a problem is how sheddy it is. This was giving me so much stress the entire time I was sewing. I was just watching more and more threads come further and further off the sides. For the second one, I am going to cut out a fresh panel with extra bits of fabric right here so that it will sit fully in a frame and have plenty of room to shed because I'm not going through this again. Overall, it's looking good. So let's do it all again. Ta-da! All right, my centuries-old, kind of cruel embroidery is finished. I'm actually really pleased with it. The second panel did not take me as long as I thought it would to finish. I think I did it in the last 4 or 5 days. I debated for a while doing this panel in like the same color layout as the first one. Not so much on the stems because I knew I wasn't gonna get the exact same layout of all these little squares, but on the leaves, I didn't really know which one would look better, let's be honest. So I just went for it and made it different. And I kind of like it in the end because the panels are in opposition and then all the colors are shifted up, it kind of makes it look like it's not even the same design. So I think it'll look really good. I'm excited to see this in the finished skirt, which will be another video coming maybe in a week, maybe in 2 weeks. It'll be coming at some point soonish. Yeah, that's basically it for this video. I just wanted to show what crewel is, what the process is, why it's different, and where I like to get my inspiration for it. I know this didn't turn out to really be crewel because I'm not using wool and it's not on linen, so it is not crewel. However, do we really have to be so picky about the labels? Ultimately though, it is still directly from a pattern that came from a bed hanging that is hundreds and hundreds of years old, which is really cool to recreate on something that I'm going to be able to wear nowadays. I don't know, maybe it's my little nerd self, but I find that very enjoyable, unique, and fun. Of course, by the time this video comes out, I will have turned this into a skirt, so insert footage of it all nicely sewn together into a skirt here. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see y'all soon. I think the biggest lesson I learned from that exploration is never do a garment sewing or embroidery project on a thick polyester blackout curtain material. That skirt has long since passed out of my wardrobe because it was awful. I did end up at some point getting a chunk of the actual Scottish linen that is like traditional for crewel work. Most expensive fabric I have ever purchased. I had plans for it. I still have plans. I haven't touched those plans, but they're there. It was seemingly a long time before I debuted another embroidery exploration project and video, but that's because I spent 18 months working on it. I actually started the whole thing not too long after this crewel experiment, and we moved twice before I finished it. Those were crazy times, y'all. Oh yeah, and another side note, I am going to be pronouncing it sashiko. I had to think about that for a minute. All the way through this video, even though it is properly pronounced sashiko. Once again, I have been corrected. I quite legitimately thought that this project would take a couple months when I started. I found this lovely book on an unauthorized trip to Barnes & Noble, and considering their embroidery section is usually pretty small, I was really thrilled to find a book that specifically teaches a type of embroidery that I have been specifically wanting to learn for quite a while now. Most of the time, when I want to try something new, I just Google it, skim through a few articles, watch 23 disconnected seconds of a YouTube video, and then dive in head first. But with sashiko, I really wanted to do it right, so a book seemed like a really good idea. And guess what? I'm gonna follow the instructions here. Mind-blowing, I know, but I even read through the entire book. Okay, I skimmed through the entire book before even starting this project. What has become of my fly by the seat of my pants method? Don't worry, it'll be back. But for today, we follow the instructions, all of them, literally, because I am stitching all 36 of the patterns included in this book, start to finish. One is never enough. That means that my first step is getting the proper supplies. The first thing the book recommends is matte cotton thread, and the brand that they recommend is, of course, Japanese. So I did find this brand on Amazon, but okay, here's the thing. They put an actual size picture in the book, and I compared it to regular cotton embroidery floss, and it's the same size. And I don't really want to spend a crap ton of money on yet another kind of floss, so okay, I'm already going against what I just said, and I'm not getting the proper Japanese sashiko embroidery floss. I'm sorry. But the fabric. It says sashiko is traditionally done on a coarsely woven white cotton fabric called sarashi. I assume that's how you pronounce it. Now, the same brand that sells the embroidery floss, Olympus, also sells the fabric. But of course that's not available on Amazon. I did find the exact pre-measured and cut one that they mention in the book in an Etsy shop for $8 a piece. 8 times 36 plus shipping. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm on a budget, man. I mean, I found other shops that are selling it, but it's always coming from really far away, so the shipping costs are huge, and I feel like I always start out these projects being like, I want to be 100% authentic as I learn this new technique. And then, the more that I research, the more that I realize that authenticity has a really big price tag. And ultimately, I would rather learn something new and not do it exactly, precisely the way that it's originally meant to be done than not learn something new at all. So, it's research time, y'all. I immediately noticed that when you search on Amazon for sarashi or sarashi momin, which is the exact like pre-cut kind from Olympus, you get a lot of cheesecloth results. Everywhere I looked, sarashi was described as 100% cotton, soft, absorbent gauze. I'm seeing 10 threads per centimeter, which seems like not very much, so I guess that's why they call it a gauze. And that's when I found a company called Maydell that sells sarashi. The book says to use a length of fabric that is 34 centimeters wide and 70 long, so you fold it in half to make a square and stitch through both layers. This sarashi was 13 inches wide, which is about 34 centimeters, and when I put in 28 inches long, which is about 70 centimeters, and then asked for 36 of that size, it came out to about $80 with free shipping to the US. Now, in case you weren't doing the math with me, that is exceptionally cheaper than the $288 plus shipping that it would have cost to get the pre-cut sarashi on pretty much every other shop that I found. It's kind of an irresistible deal. And I really don't like to buy stuff off of random websites. Like, I don't know. There's nothing particularly sketchy about this website. It looks perfectly fine. But I just have mixed feelings about spending a chunk of money at an online retailer that I've never heard of before. Apparently not mixed enough though, because I bought it and it's here. Let's open this bad boy up. Hooray, your order is inside. Thank you. We have sarashi. I like this material. So it came pre-cut, 36 pieces of this size, and you're supposed to fold it in half when you sew, so you get like a little square, if I can fold in half. Very pleased with this. So one thing that I did not know about sashiko until I started reading the book was that you don't do it in any sort of hoop or frame. My first thought was, oh, you know, I'll have to do that in one of my Q-snap frames. And then I picked up the book and started flipping through, and it was like, no, you do it in your hands. There's no frame involved, which, can I just say, I am very excited about. Because you know how much easier that makes storing and transporting and just doing these in general? And then I could so easily fold up one of these and put it in my purse and work on it on the go. And it would just take up a lot less space than an embroidery hoop usually does, especially an embroidery hoop that fits something of that size in it. I'm really excited to start this. Is it a lot? Yeah. Do I care? No, except in a positive way. Yay, I care! Let's consult the book and see what our first step is. I just realized that I haven't really talked about what sashiko is, so if you don't know what sashiko embroidery is, I'm not the person you should be asking. Basically, all that I know about it is that it's a Japanese style of embroidery that's done with what I would refer to as running stitches, but they use those running stitches to create these absolutely gorgeous geometric designs that are so fascinating to look at. There are some incredible artists who do sashiko embroidery on Instagram, which is where I first really noticed it and realized that it was a specific thing with lots of history and lots of detail and lots of facts about it that I don't know. So yeah, sorry, I'm not really here to tell you the history of sashiko. I wish I could, but I am just here to learn sashiko and take you along on the journey. Well, I'm already confused, so this is a good first step. All right, after about 15 minutes of reading, I have my first 2 steps. So the very first thing you actually want to do is fold your fabric in half and then fold it in half again so you get like a center line, I think. I feel like everything I say in this video, there should be a little asterisk, we all say it wrong, at the end of it with a little note on the bottom that says, I think. It's recommended that not only do you iron it flat to get rid of any creases in your fabric, but also that you then fold the fabric in half and iron a little bit of a crease into it so that you have a center line and you can use that to perfectly line up the design on your square. I'm committing to doing it right. Let's get the iron. Hello, the iron. Where are you? Did I put you somewhere weird? I'd say that's decent. Kind of. I think that's all we needed. Thanks, iron. So I'm literally just gonna start with the very first pattern they have in here, which is this one right here. They also recommend tracing it onto graph paper, but I do not have any graph paper on hand, so I'm not doing that. I think it's right. It's boggling my brain a little bit, but I'm pretty sure it's right. Now to put that onto that. It's not the neatest. I could definitely improve, but I think it'll get the job done. So next up, I need to sew this edge together, which you do inside out, and that way you can turn it right side out and it makes a little tube. All right, so it's the next morning because in case you couldn't tell by the lighting, tracing all of this on took quite a while and it became quite late. I got it sewn together into the tube shape as required. So I believe the next step is gonna be actually sewing on it. Oh, but first I need some coffee because it's still early. I'm actually excited to spend my day sewing this because it sounds very relaxing, and a nice relaxing day is what I need right now. I'm actually hoping to get one of these fully stitched today and then prep anywhere from like 2 to 5 more because I have a background job tomorrow and possibly the next day that'll probably be long all day, and this is the perfect thing to bring on set so that I can work on something and not just be sitting there twiddling my thumbs in between takes. Before you begin sashiko embroidery, baste the center section in a cross formation to prevent the fabric from shifting. That's a good idea. You're so beautiful. Y'all, there is nothing like a little bit of coffee, some hand stitching, and a sleepy puppy in the morning. So I didn't know this terminology for a while because, quite frankly, I still find it kind of confusing, but there's basically two methods of hand sewing. One is the stabbing method, where you stab into your fabric, pull it through the other side, stab back into the fabric, pull it out the other side. When you're working on tightened fabric in a frame, it's the easier method because it's difficult to slide your needle through the fabric when your fabric is pulled that tight. The other method, sliding your needle through, it goes in, it goes out, and it's still in the fabric, and then you pull the whole thing through. That's apparently just called the sewing method, which I find very confusing because they're both sewing. Sewing is the overall term, but that is apparently what it's called. Before I knew the proper terminology, I referred to it as the stabbing method and the sliding method. But that's not what it's called officially. Anyway, for sashiko, it is completely about the sewing method because your fabric is not taut, you're just holding it in your hand and you're doing a bunch of running stitches. So like the whole way that you're supposed to sew it is by sliding your needle through the fabric and doing multiple stitches at one time and then pulling the needle all the way through. And I do like the feel of it. Like I don't do it very much because it's just not conducive to the type of embroidery that I do. But the feeling of doing the sewing method is really cool. I don't know, maybe it's just me. All right, so I have basted it together, just sort of in an X shape across the front. So I would say that that is the full prep work. So now, I believe we get to the stitching. The first stitching step is always to stitch the frame around the outside. So you do knot your very first piece of thread and then you knot the very end when you finish the outside. But in between, when you run out of floss while you're stitching, you actually don't knot the end and you don't knot the new piece. You just do this like layering method on the stitches to secure them. So that'll be interesting to try. Look at your fancy little paws. All right, let's get stitching. I started out just doing single stitches because it was kind of hard to pull the needle through the fabric. And then I realized that that was because I was stitching through 4 layers of the fabric instead of 2 layers because this is the side with the seam where I stitched it together. I did get a nice neat corner on it, and then once I started the second side where I was only going through 2 layers of fabric like you're supposed to, it was so much easier. I was able to do the actual method that you're supposed to do with sashiko, where you do multiple stitches at one time and then pull the needle all the way through. I started small, just doing anywhere from like 3 to 5, but by the end I was getting pretty comfortable with it. The main focus here is trying to get all of your stitches exactly the same size with exactly the same amount of space in between them, which obviously I did not achieve whatsoever. But I think the overall effect is pretty darn good. I ran out of thread once, so I did the method of threading through a new piece by just going in and out of the exact same stitches. So you're kind of just layering the new piece of thread underneath the old one, and it's not really supposed to show on the front. I think it worked pretty well. I can tell that the stitches on the front are a little bit thicker than the normal ones, so I think you can see where I put the new thread, but it seems decently secure without having a lumpy knot there, so that's good. Ta-da! 1 border done. By the time I got to the end of this, I was getting pretty comfortable with it. I've learned that when you're pulling your needle through, you need to make sure that you're pulling it straight, not like bending it upwards or anything, or that makes it more difficult to get through the fabric. My stitches are somewhat even in some places. It's not too bad though. 3-foot rule, the overall look is pretty clean. I love you. He's a needy boy. You wanna come over here? Good boy. Had to think about it that time, huh? So basically from here on out, you don't make any more knots. You thread all of your new pieces of thread in and out of the fabric the way that I did when I was adding a new piece of thread on the border. You're supposed to start your first piece of thread here, do the stair step here, here, all the way up to here. Then you pass your thread underneath the fabric, or between the two layers of the fabric technically, to get back to this, and then you can complete that stair step across all the way to the other side. And you just keep doing that until the whole thing is filled in. Seems pretty simple. I'm gonna give it a try. Two done, 34 to go. My fingers hurt. Have you been looking for a way to build some killer calluses on your thumb? Well, look no further. Sashiko! Here for all your thumb toughening needs. Seriously though, y'all. I stitched the first 3 of these pieces pretty much in solid succession, and I was in so much pain. But of course I just kept going. Of course I did. And now, I'm getting a nice thick covering of calluses there. A little bit here too. Mostly on my thumb though. Good times. We're 6 pieces in, 30 more to go. 36 did not sound like that much when I started, and now I'm realizing that that is a lot. So by the end of this, my thumb might be able to like break through metal walls. I killed men using only my thumb. The first 6 of these, I must admit, are not the best or even good technically. I really wasn't focusing on perfecting the art of sashiko as much with these 6. It was more about just like getting into the rhythm of making the patterns and doing the running stitch and holding the fabric in my hands. So especially on the points where a lot of lines meet and you're supposed to have like a neat little circle in the center, I don't. Also, there's just places where some of my stitches are really small and then, you know, 2 lines over, they're twice the size. Corners I'm doing okay on. I think my corners look pretty neat. I also think on the next group, I need to just be a little more careful even tracing the patterns on, just a little more clean, a little more even. And then, yeah, I just really want to spend the remaining 30 of these focusing more on actually perfecting the style, getting my stitches neat and even and all the same size, and all of my joints or meeting points nice and clean, even if that means that it's going to be a slower process. But yeah, just wanted to give a little update because I don't think I will again until I am finished with all of them. I did not really think about how long this project was going to take me when I started it, which is fine. I'm not in a rush. It is finished! I have two main takeaways from the last year and a half. The first is that sashiko really is your ultimate travel embroidery. Like if you are on the go, this is the best thing to bring with you. No hoop, no frame, it folds up so small. For the first year, I think, I was legitimately carrying it around in a Ziploc bag. And then I finally got a cute little bag. Took me long enough. So yeah, these things have gone everywhere with me on road trips and on planes. They went to Brazil, they went to France, they went to 2 different sisters' weddings. They made it through 2 different moves. We've moved twice since I started this project. And mostly they came with me on all of my background jobs. So actually I was kind of expecting to get all of these done in a year, and it was basically because I haven't had a background job in the last, what is it now, 140 days, something like that. We've been on strike. But yeah, that's what kind of slowed it down at the end and added on another 6 months, because this was really just my I'm not in the house stitching project, and then all of a sudden I was always in the house, so I just kind of had to do it in the house. It was so nice on sets though, and it's really cool because I can look back through it and kind of remember some of the jobs that I was doing when I sewed them. Like I was trying to remember what day I started this project, and I figured it out based on the background job that I said I was gonna go do the next day. It was a 3-day job where I was just like sitting in the back of a courtroom, and I finished the first 3 pieces on that job. So anyway, just lots of memories tied up in here. If you take your embroidery with you when you go places, then that embroidery becomes tied up in the memories of the places you went. And yeah, I don't know, really cool. I said I had 2 main takeaways. What was my other takeaway? Oh yes, my other main takeaway is that I really suck at explaining sashiko to strangers. Because I was always doing it on the go and on sets and stuff, people asked me all the time like, oh, what are you making? And for the longest time, I would just like freeze up and be like, what do I say? Because there's that nerd side of my brain that wants to like fully explain what I'm doing and where it came from and what the whole project is, which is why I do long videos of talking. But then the logical side of my brain is like, you need like a 3-word answer. But yeah, it didn't sound right to say I'm making sashiko, because that doesn't feel like the right verb, and also no one would know what I meant by that. I mean, one guy legit was like, oh, it's so cool that you bring your knitting with you, and I was like, okay. I mean, kudos for being interested. Kudos for knowing what knitting is, only I guess he didn't know what knitting is because knitting? Anyway, yeah, eventually I just settled on saying, I'm making embroidery, and then I let them ask more questions if they wanted to, which usually they don't. But I've also been sharing the pieces kind of as I went on Instagram, and everyone on there asks, like, what are you making with them? What are you gonna do with all of these squares? I don't know, y'all. I mean, originally I was like, oh, I could put them all together into a quilt, right? But kind of not. I don't know, maybe it would work. Tell me if that like works in your head. But here's my thoughts. One, kind of the whole point is that the back of the embroidery also looks cool. You don't necessarily want to cover that up. It's not the front, but like you worked hard to make sure the back also looks nice. So I wouldn't want to put like a backing on the quilt and just be like, you'll never see this again. But then if I didn't put a backing on it, it feels like it wouldn't really feel like a quilt. It would just be kind of thin. But also the different patterns really change the squares a lot. Like this square is smaller than this square, even though they started out being the same size. But it's because there's so much more embroidery on it. There's so much more thread that it is literally, I don't know what's it pulls the whole thing inward and makes it tighter, and yeah, like it's slightly smaller now. So not all of the squares are the same size. Not all of them have the exact same size of border around the edges. I don't know, making a quilt out of it feels really cool in concept, but then when I break it down, it feels like it wouldn't actually work that well. So I don't know. My only recent thought has been to just take a needle and thread and thread through all of the corners so that they kind of hang like this, and just literally thread up all 36 of them like a garland and then hang them on the wall somewhere. I might do that. Tell me if you have better ideas than that, because I don't. You know what else is interesting? This kind of applies to embroidery in general, but I did get the statement a lot when I shared pictures of this kind of embroidery, people will often say like, oh my goodness, you have so much patience to do embroidery. And I always find that interesting because I'm like, yeah, I guess, maybe, but it doesn't feel like embroidery requires patience in my brain. I think because I think of patience as like something you need if you're trying to get through something. Like if you just want to get to your destination, you need patience for the journey. But that's rarely how I look at embroidery. I don't embroider to have a finished product most of the time. I will say, once I wasn't on sets anymore and I was having to do these at home and they were the way more complicated ones, I did get to a point where I was like, okay, could we wrap this up now? But generally speaking, whether it's this, whether it's my big embroidery pieces, whether it's the small embroidery pieces that I made back when I first started, I never feel like I need patience to do it because I'm not embroidering to have a finished piece of embroidery. I'm embroidering because the actual process of embroidering is calming and peaceful and like a good use of my hands and my brain. I don't know, yeah? Does this make sense? But yeah, so I think if you're looking at embroidery and you're like, oh, I would never have the patience to try that, don't count yourself out for that, is I guess my point. I guess the way that I think of it is that if you're thinking, oh my God, I have to finish this project, when it comes to embroidery or really any craft style that is like supposed to be a replenishing hobby, something that refreshes your mind. If you're ever looking at that as like, oh, I just need to get this done, that just doesn't feel like the right mindset. I mean, again, in all fairness, I've had those points. When I'm embroidering teeny tiny little shingles on this castle piece, I'm like, oh my God, can I just get this done? But it's not how I feel about the piece as a whole, it's just like that one little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm over explaining now, but like, if you wanna try embroidery because you should be doing it when you want to do it. You should be doing it when you're just trying to pass the time, or when you need something in your hands to make them still and focused, or when you need to calm down your mind. It shouldn't be like, oh, I have to finish this project and it's taking so long and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, sure. And if you're interested in embroidery, I do highly recommend Sashiko. I recommend trying it out. The book, I'll put a picture of it because I was gonna bring it out here, but I forgot to. Simply Sashiko, I highly recommend that. A lot of people have been asking me, was I following a kit or something? No, I think it would be easier to start with a kit that has the fabric and the thread and maybe already has the pattern drawn on for you if you just like want to try one piece real fast. But the prep for all of these, while it did take a bunch of time, it was a very enjoyable process. And you also don't have to do Sashiko on these perfect little squares like this. You can literally do it on anything. So I'm kind of wanting to try out some freehand Sashiko next, just like get some fabric or even some clothing and just start stitching on it. I don't know. I've told myself from now on, I'm drawing a boundary. I'm only allowed to have 3 embroidery projects going at any one time. So this was number 3, Castle piece and Fantasia piece are 1 and 2. Now that this one is done, I can explore a new embroidery type, and that'll probably be coming soon. And on that note, let me wrap up this video because it's probably getting long now. Sashiko, give it a try. Okay, bye! My legs are asleep. What more can I say? I said a lot at the end of that one, but hoo boy, 18 months is a long time to put into one project and video. That is too hot. I still have not done anything with the 36 squares, but you know, since I'm letting you in on secrets during this compilation, I might be auctioning them off eventually. Shh, don't tell. Again, it was totally about the process, not the product for me. So like, I'd be happy to pass them on to someone else, quite frankly. For my next embroidery exploration, well, I was terrified of pronouncing things incorrectly, that I recall. Y'all, sometimes I just don't know how to start a video. Most of the time I have a great intro planned out in my head, and then sometimes I'm just like, what are words? So I'll just get right to it. Bargello. I want to try it. It's very sunny in here. I've been embroidering for a pretty long time now. I started in 2017, I think. But embroidery is just one form of needlework, and I have a list that I have always wanted to try. I tried cross stitch way back in the day. I didn't like it very much. Sorry, cross stitchers. It just wasn't for me. And then most recently, I did a very long exploration of sashiko and apparently put the emphasis on the wrong syllable of that word in the entire video, which made some people want to rip out their hair, I guess. Sorry, guys. So the next needlework style that was on my list, one that I have been meaning to try for a really long time, is Bargello embroidery needlepoint. What is it exactly? Terminology has always been kind of an interesting thing in the world of needlework. And like sashiko, I'm not really here to like tell you the whole story of where this came from. I'm not a historian, I haven't studied this, but I always do lightly do a bit of research because I want to know what the thing is that I'm doing and where it came from. I am almost entirely certain that I am pronouncing the word correctly this time. It is an Italian word. I have lightly studied Italian. And it's one of those words that does not actually mean anything in Italian. Like something I looked up said that it probably comes from the Latin word for like castle or a fortified tower, but it's basically like a name. The term got its name from some embroidery that was found in the Bargello Palace in Florence. Like they found some chairs, it had this flame motif on it, which we'll talk about the motifs in a second, and they were like, we'll call this Bargello embroidery because this is the Bargello Palace. But apparently in Italy, they refer to this stitch style as Hungarian point, but then also there are apparently some British sources of like a very similar embroidery style that calls it Irish stitch. So basically it kind of just seems like nobody knows exactly where this came from, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. You try to like trace this one style of embroidery back to like a single source, but it's not rocket science to be like, hey, what if we did stitches in this specific way? So it's not like crazy to think that multiple people around multiple places in the world came up with the same style of stitching. Anyway, because of the chairs and because they were found in Florence, it is sometimes also called flame work or Florentine work. Lots of names for it. I could not find a solidly reliable picture of these original 14th century chairs. Yeah, all the pictures that I could find of what possibly was the chairs, the embroidery was in a curved motif, at least that's what it looked like to me, and very clearly all the sources say that these original chairs had a flame motif on them, which is why it is sometimes now called flamework. So if you are looking at this style and you're like, oh hey, I recognize that, and my brain says the 70s. Yeah, it randomly had a revival in the 1960s and 70s. Despite being more recent, still wasn't that easy to research, like why it suddenly had a resurgence. But I think it might be entirely down to one woman, Dorothy Kestner, might also be Keistner, but I'm gonna go with Kestner, who wrote the book on Bargello and also invented, I guess, four-way Bargello. So Bargello is vertical stitches. It's all done like this. Unless you do four-way Bargello, in which case you can do some like this and some like this, so you get this cool pattern that sort of sucks into the center. Apparently you can also do eight-way Bargello, but I literally could not find a photo example of it, so if you've ever seen that, cool. But I can understand people latching onto it. It's supposed to be a pretty fast version of needlework, like most embroidery, as you may know, is very slow. I've currently reached like 2 years of work on a single embroidery project. But this is much faster. It's using a bigger type of thread. It's using a looser weave of material. Wikipedia did say that it's a difficult form of needlework because you have to count, but that seems like somebody's opinion. And I don't necessarily see a ton of Bargello, but I did want to shout out the account, or business actually, Hello Bargello. Looking at her stuff on Instagram has been what's kept this idea in the back of my head, like, I should try this. I'm not gonna use her stuff because you know me, I have to just kind of figure things out on my own, but I'll give her a shout out anyway. What I picked up is the book by Dorothy. I don't think these are in print anymore. She wrote 2 books and this is her second one. I just kind of had to pick which one I wanted to get because, yeah, as you can see, like, It's not in the greatest shape. This was published in 1974. Possibly because this is her second book, or maybe it was just never her thing. She doesn't go into any of like the history or anything about Bargello itself in here other than how to do it. What she does have in here is 67 designs. I'm not gonna do all of them. I love working my way through an entire book. That's what I did with Sashiko. I'm not doing that this time. I thought that I would just take the next week, spend every day doing some work, and I'll just see how much I can get done in those 7 days. Today, I just wanna like get the concept. So Bargello is typically done with wool on canvas. I have a bunch of plastic canvases, which are really commonly used nowadays. I mean, maybe this started in the 60s and 70s. I don't think it was in use in the 14th century. But these are pretty common nowadays because they're just easy to sew on, they're more stable, and you can turn them into things. Then I also have some, y'all, the pronunciations today. I always call this Aida because that's how you pronounce the name of the Broadway. But I think somebody told me it's actually pronounced just Aida? Ada? I like Aida better. And then as far as the wool, I have both tapestry wool and crewel wool. Tapestry wool being a 4-ply, I believe, and then crewel wool is 2-ply, so it's a lot thinner. I am almost entirely certain that traditionally you're supposed to use tapestry wool because it's supposed to be a pretty thick boy. A thick wool. I read that 1 stitch covers 4 threads, fibers, and then the process of moving your stitches so that you don't just have a straight line is called stepping. So if you do like sharp steps where you're offsetting the stitches quite a bit, then you'll get like a sharp diagonal line, and that is a flame motif. But if you do small steps where you're just offsetting them a little bit, you're gonna get more of a curved line, which is called a curved motif. The whole motif thing was a little bit confusing to me because like some of the research that I did was like, oh, there's all these traditional motifs. But then other sources, it seemed like that was just the term for how you're moving your colors. So it's basically like there's flame, or there's curved. Those are the 2 motifs. What you do with them is your choice. And then like Wikipedia said, oh, there's 4 main motifs: flames, diamonds, ribbons, and medallions. As with pretty much all forms of needlework, it's always really cool to do research on them. It's also very difficult to do research on them. But in the end, like, the point is just to have fun and make something that you like, not to like do it the perfect historical way, at least for me. I'm just gonna have some fun. So let me start today with a bit of testing. Y'all, the sun is moving more and more onto my face. I can't escape it anymore. Let me move locations. Ooh, I hear trotty paws. Hello? You wanna keep me company? Only if you get scratches. Okay, so I've got some tapestry needles, and then I don't think you'd want to put like a knot on the back of here. It would have to be pretty big to not go through here. So I'm gonna assume that the most common way to secure your ends are to stitch over it, is to stitch over it. So like you would start your first stitch and just leave a bit of a tail on the back, and then your second stitch would go over that tail as you circle around behind and hold it down, and so on with your future stitches. So I did 4 threads of the plastic canvas, and I think that's a really big stitch. Also, you can see all of the warp, I guess. It sounds so silly to say that when you're talking about a piece of plastic. You can see all of the ones going this way in between. Let me try 2. I mean, you can still just see the in-between. And also, if you're only doing 2, you don't really have a lot of options for stepping. I mean, it's not necessarily bad to be able to see the plastic canvas. It just feels like a different kind of thing. But before I try something else, I think securing your other end would just involve going back through your stitches on the back. Yeah, that seems right. Okay. I actually prefer it on the Aida. I mean, you definitely can't see any of the canvas in Dorothy's work. Oh, hey, look, there were pieces of yarn in the book. Little remnants from whoever owned this and used it before. Okay, so she talks in this book about using 4 strands or 3 strands or 2 strands of Nantucket Needleworks yarn. Persian yarn is one that she talks about using a lot. Y'all, Nantucket Needleworks is still an existing company. Their yarn is 6 ply, so that is much thicker. But if you look up Bargello yarn right now, you just get tapestry wool. That's generally what most people are using, and it is pretty thick. So I'm just wondering, are my plastic canvases like way too thick themselves? What if I just double up? Okay, so if I put 2 pieces of wool in each hole, that is definitely covering a lot more. I don't think that's the normal way to do it. I think my plastic canvases are just like the plastic itself is too thick. I already ordered normal canvas. It's coming. It's probably gonna get here later today. So starting tomorrow with day 1 of my Bargello exploration, I'll work with the actual proper canvas and we'll see how that goes. I think I'm just gonna start with a simple design and go from there. And then for absolutely no reason, other than that I thought it would be funny, I think I'm also gonna do a random little challenge. I'm gonna try to drink my morning coffee out of anything other than a mug or a teacup. Y'all, I don't know. I just thought it would be funny. Okay, let's do it. Day 1. We're starting the no mugs and cups week easy with coffee in a bowl. There's a restaurant in New York that serves their large lattes in a bowl, and for some reason, it brought me such great joy. My canvas did not arrive yesterday, but I did make the pilgrimage to Joann to get more tapestry wool and also got a canvas in the meantime. More on that in a moment. But for now, I'm going to try the plastic canvas that I already have. I wanted to see what a regular yarn would look like on the plastic canvases, and actually this is kind of the perfect amount of width to the stitches to cover the plastic in between. But also it was really hard to pull through the holes, which makes it not a very pleasant stitching experience. I could jump to a slightly thinner yarn, but I'm just gonna do a double stitch with the tapestry wool. The double stitch does make the whole process half as fast. Not quite as speedy as normal, but still significantly speedier than the embroidery that I'm used to, and I am quite enjoying it. All right, I think that was a good day 1. I actually really like it. I do think it's not so bad being able to see the plastic through when it's a color that kind of goes with your color scheme, but I am excited to use the canvas. So, what I learned last night when I went to buy more tapestry wool, I was staring at all of their like needlepoint canvases and everything that they have there, and I learned what I should have already known because it's the exact same thing with needle sizes. The numbers work in the opposite direction of what I tend to assume they would. My assumption was that bigger numbers equal bigger holes, but it's the opposite. You gonna leave me? Bye. So it's actually the bigger the number, the finer the weave, or the smaller the holes. I got a size 14, which is a little bit finer than the size 10 that's coming in the mail. And I had a thought, most of the stickers that were on these plastic things, they didn't say size 7, but they all had a 7 on them. I think the size is 7, and that's why it's so big. Interesting thing to learn. I think this will be a really good comparison. So the size 10 should be arriving tonight. I'm gonna work on that tomorrow. And this was just sort of playing around, like I didn't really try to do anything specific. So I think tomorrow I will actually look at an image and try to copy it, something simple, and then from there I can go to something from the book because those are much more complicated. Good day 1. Looking forward to day 2. I'm quite enjoying it. Day 2. Coffee in a plate seemed like a natural progression. My fellow ladies, do you love this style of not quite a bowl but also not quite a plate dishes? I saw something on Instagram about women loving them, and it is so true. I adore these, and Matt hates them. Anyway, I feel like an orphan in Oliver. The slosh factor is high, but it does cool quickly. I had some time last night, so I tried out a 4-way Bargello design, just copying a simple one I had found in a photo online. It was really fun. Ooh, puppy cuddle time. Ahem. It was fun. You kind of work in a circle and it flowed well, so good times. My size 10 canvas also arrived, and oh look, it's actually size 12. That's on me. I now recall changing my mind on the size at the last minute and then immediately forgetting I'd done that. It's also very springy. Comparing this to the size 14 stuff I got at the store, you can see that they are vastly different, and I'm pretty sure that comes down to this one being actual Bargello or needlepoint canvas, and this one being fiddler's cloth. Fascinating stuff. I'm going to leave the size 12 to flatten under some books and try out a motif I've been seeing a lot on the size 14. I'm just gonna copy a photo again. Dorothy probably has designs like this in her first book, but the second one is much more complex. Perhaps this design is popular because it's sort of a blend of the different motifs. There's some flame, some curve, ribbons around the outside with medallions in the center. I don't have a ton of color choices for nice gradations like this because tapestry wool is proving hard to find in the stores here, but I'll give it my best shot. Okay, so I think that's where I'm gonna stop for today because I have some other stuff to get done. One medallion. It definitely looks, you know, more like it's supposed to look. You can't see any of the canvas through. I did discover a little bit of information that I had overlooked, or rather I had looked at it and my brain didn't register anything that it said. So it turns out there's a canvas to yarn chart in the front of this book. And yeah, I glanced at it and I was like, I don't understand any of this. Now I understand it. She tells you the mesh size and then the size of all of the types of yarn that she was using. So the Persian yarn is 3 2-ply strands, which means it is thicker than this because this is 4-ply total. The Nantucket needlework is 4 2-ply strands, so it's double this. So yeah, that kind of tells me something interesting here, because for example on the Nantucket Needleworks yarn for a size 12 mesh, which is what I ordered, it's flattening over there still, she says to use 6 strands. And I'm assuming that that means 6 of the 2-ply strands. So we're now talking 12-ply, right? That is way thicker than that. That's triple this. So yeah, I don't know how helpful that is, but it was some interesting information. I'm just gonna keep doing whatever I want to do, let's be real. Good times. And now I'm hungry. Day 3, and we're going with a travel tumbler for the coffee. Bit of a cop-out? Yeah. But y'all, I booked a background job for the first time in almost a year. Whee! My medallion, ribbon, whatever it is Bargello is going to set with me, and I'll work on it in the downtime while we're in holding. There's always a lot of downtime. Day 4, and how about coffee in a vase? I like this one because it holds a lot more than my typical mug does. And I was welcomed back to background work with a 16-hour workday, so I could use all the coffee. We spent most of that time on set rather than in the holding area, so I actually didn't get much done on this piece. Today I'm in recovery mode. Sit here, drink my vase of coffee, watch some TV, and finish this motif. And of course, cuddle my smallish beast. That took a few hours to finish up. I really like it, even though this color scheme isn't the most pleasing. I'm gonna have to go dig up some more tapestry wool colors soon, cause my selection's not great. I could not be bothered to stare at my computer screen and edit for the rest of the day though, so I'm gonna move right along to testing the size 12 needlepoint canvas. And I think to do so, I shall attempt the first pattern in Dorothy's book, this scroll one. I've got some shades of pink that I can do with a light orange background, so yeah, let's give it a go. Day 5. Let's try coffee in a sauce pot. More like a jam pan, actually. I always use this pot for homemade jam. Is a metal container a good idea for hot coffee? Probs not. At least it's got a handle. I got a decent amount done on the scrolls yesterday, so I'm gonna keep working on that. It's definitely faster working on the actual canvas where the holes are so obvious, I guess. Those split seconds you spend on more closed materials trying to find the proper place to bring up your needle, those really add up fast. On the other hand, we're back to the kind of abrasive material that can be difficult to hold on to, so I cut it down into the size I plan on filling in just to make it easier. Okay, 2 of the 4 colors done on here. So one thing I am noticing is that the 4-2 step is really sort of the norm in Bargello, 4 being the size of the stitch, and then 2 being the number that you step up. So rather than achieving a curved motif or a flame motif by altering that step, like doing a 4-1 step or a 4-3 step, you get that curve or that sharp line by the number of stitches you line up next to each other, but it's all still 4-2 step. So like on this one, this curve is sharper than this curve, and that's achieved by just doing different numbers of stitches. So on here we go 6, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, whereas on this one it's 6, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 6. And I looked through the book pretty thoroughly, and not every single design is completely 4-2, but most of it is 4-2. And most of the random images that I found online, if you break it down, it's 4-2, which is just interesting to me. I'm not sure why that is, because you could do 4-1, 4-3, or you could do 3-2. I don't know, you could do other things, but I suppose the repetition and the really geometric pattern is a lot easier to plan out and a lot easier to get perfect by doing that consistent 4-2. Anyway, observation of the day. I do have some editing to do today, so I'm gonna pause there for now and I will work on it some more later tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow. Day 6, y'all. I'm going with coffee in a mushroom canister and immediately missing the handle that I had yesterday. Heat conduction. Who would have thunk it? I got the light pink almost finished last night, so for starters, let me get that done. Yeah, that's about it. There's not much exciting stuff happening today. Okay, so I haven't talked yet today. Okay, so the pink is all done. So now all that I have left is to fill in all of the background space with my background color. And even though it's bigger areas, she still does all of it with the 4-2 step, basically. So there are some places where there's gonna have to be a smaller stitch, like right here, that would only be a half-size stitch, but she doesn't do any of the stitches bigger just because the area is bigger. So anyway, one thing I think is interesting to note about Bargello, if you just look up Bargello and you don't say Bargello embroidery or Bargello needlepoint, you'll actually get a lot of quilting results, because apparently at some point, and I don't know when this happened, but at some point in history, quilters looked at Bargello designs and motifs and were like, hey, we could do that with fabric. So Bargello for them, I think, just kind of means this style of geometric design that's done with like the long vertical strips. It seems to be very popular. I found mostly quilting results, quite honestly. It was kind of hard to go through and find the actual needlework because it seems Bargello quilting is far more popular at this day and age than Bargello needlepoint. If you've ever made a Bargello quilt, I'd be fascinated to know. What motif did you use? Was it fun? Did you like it? Gotta love the way that art and craft styles morph over the time periods. Yeah, so basically we're just doing that until the whole thing is filled in. Cool. Day 7 at last. This is probably the most mug-like container I've used, but it's actually the bowl of a food processor, hence the reason there's a hole in the center. Ooh, magic. Booty. Good morning. So I finished the scroll work last night. There was definitely one or two places where I miscounted, but you can't even tell. So basically, I've done kind of what I set out to do. I wanted to try Bargello, I wanted to try different supplies, different motifs and styles, and see what I liked the best. I think the perfect canvas size for this kind of 4-ply tapestry wool is probably a size 14. So here's what I'm gonna do. I want to start a bigger project. I want to do one of the ones from the book. I want to choose one of her really complex patterns and actually stitch the whole thing. Not in this video, but I am going to need some better floss colors, and I want to see if I can find a size 14 canvas. I said I would only have 3 embroidery projects at a time, and this will make 4, so already going back on that. But I found a needlework shop that is local to me. It's fairly close. So I think today I'm gonna drive down there and see what supplies they have, because honestly, like Joann and Michaels just don't have a huge selection of the floss colors in the wool. And then these canvases, y'all, they're so hard to find. I'm not finding any of them in stores. So I'm gonna go see if I can find a size 14 needlepoint canvas in a local store, because I should do that more. I tend to just go online now because I don't like leaving the house, but using a local store is much better. I have one last project that I want to do in this video, which if I complete it, you'll have already seen, but I just want to make a little day 1, day 2, etc. placard for this video. You're so precious. Whoo, y'all. I am reminded of why I so often do just go straight online to find stuff. That was expensive. It was a really cool store. They had so much thread, floss, yarn, stuff I had never seen before. So like, if I'm doing some project in the future and I need velvet embroidery floss, yeah, that was something they had, I'll definitely be going back. But generally speaking, this was way more expensive than I was expecting. I got a good size of size 14 canvas. The motif, I guess, or design that I've chosen to do is this one right here. Tough choice. I definitely wanted to do a 4-way, like I really like this one, but I wanted to try one of the 4-way options, and she has some really good ones in here. But I liked the flow of this one. I don't know, it seems cool. So they didn't have any of the DMC or Anchor 4-ply tapestry wool. Everything else you could think of, none of that. So this was the closest to the size that I could find, and it's 50% silk, 50% merino wool. So why was this so expensive? That's why. So I'm going with like a turquoise blue, green, and purple 4 shades of each one. That's about it. This is gonna be another slow project that's going to probably take me many, many months to finish, particularly because I always have to jump back and forth between all of my slow embroidery projects, which is why I just wanted to spend a week trying Bargello rather than just immediately jumping in to a long-term project. I really wanted to have a feel for it before I went for something big like this. And it's been really fun. I would not call it a difficult embroidery style or needlework style. If you are a cross-stitcher who's looking to branch out, try something new, you will have absolutely no trouble with it. You're basically already there. If you are somebody who's never embroidered before, I think it's a great version to start with, particularly if you really like those kind of geometric designs. I'm already thinking about like, what can I put this on as far as clothing goes. It's also a great option for kids. I mean, I don't know anything about childhood development, but like learning patterns and counting and repetition seems like something that would be good for certain ages of children. I don't know what that age is. But also on top of that, because you're embroidering on a canvas, particularly if you just gave them like the plastic canvas, you don't have to be using a sharp needle. You could full on give them a plastic needle with no sharpness to it whatsoever. So it would also be like a really safe version for kids to do. And not that he's a kid, but Matt actually embroidered some of this piece. So yeah, if you have no embroidery experience whatsoever, and you're looking for something to get started with, Bargello is a great option. This has been fun. I love learning a new embroidery style. If you have any embroidery styles or needlework styles you think I should try out, do let me know. I already have a bunch on my list, but I'll always add more. Oh, and my favorite coffee mug replacement was actually the vase. It kept my coffee warm for a really long time. It held a lot of coffee and it didn't burn my hands. Later, taters. Well, that's not gonna work. So much sunlight right in my face. We tried. That was fun.
What's that for?
What?
That.
What?
This.
What?
Here.
What?
The tea. Soup.
I of course finished that larger final Bargello piece quite a long time ago, and it has since been sold in a charity auction, so that's lovely. I did quite enjoy the process on that one, but I was very eager upon finishing it to get started on my next exploration, since these explorations had kind of always served as my travel embroidery piece, and I was about to travel. How much stitching do I think I'm going to be able to do while I'm in England, seeing the country and taking a course and, you know, being a tourist? I don't know. I have high hopes. The term chicken scratch has a few different meanings. I immediately associate it with handwriting so poor you can barely read it, like the prescription I got from an eye doctor once that was written so badly we were never able to fully decipher it, even with the help of another doctor. Also, there's some stuff that you feed chickens that's called chicken scratch apparently, and that seems to be the main result if you just Google the term. There's also several restaurants around the country who I don't think are a chain, but just like all had the same idea for a name called Chicken Scratch, and possibly one called Scratch Chicken. But to top it all off, it's also a type of embroidery. Woo! Let's move somewhere else so I can wear glasses without them becoming a sheet of white reflection. It also goes by gingham embroidery. Gingham? Gingham? Gingham. It's really just occurring to me right now what a weird word that is. Gingham. Gingham. Which is probably the most descriptive term out there because you do embroider on gingham. It's crucial to the style. Then there's snowflake embroidery, Amish embroidery, or Amish lace, and depression lace. The lace part is referring to the illusion of lace that this style can create when you're seeing it from afar. And then of course there's many other names from other countries for what is essentially the exact same concept, because as is often the case, multiple cultures, societies, and peoples will come up with the exact same idea completely independently of each other. It seems like the term chicken scratch started to specifically be used during the 1930s, maybe. Depression lace, because this style was used to fake a lacy look at a really economically trying time. But big surprise, there's little to no information on the history and origin of gingham embroidery. Wow! Wow! I discovered the term and a description of the style several years ago now when I was trying to make a comprehensive list of every embroidery style out there. I gave up on that list because of the same aforementioned lack of history and information. Ah yes, women's work. Why would anyone care, right? Is there steam coming out of my ears? So yeah, all that to say, chicken scratch has been on my list for ages now, and having tackled crewel, sashiko, and bargello, now seemed like a good time. Mainly because I am in need of some travel embroidery. I have a travel embroidery piece, something that I take on planes and road trips and to background jobs, but it's a little chunky. It does not fit in a small purse, and I can't really just carry it around with me everywhere, which is what I like to do when I'm traveling abroad for a chunk of time, which I'm about to do. Last year I took sashiko with me to France, and this year I would like to take gingham embroidery with me to England. Do I really need to be starting a new embroidery project when I'm about to go take a 2-week course in crewel work that requires me to finish an entire piece before I leave? What a ridiculous question, of course! What would I do on the plane? So as the name implies, or just straight up informs, gingham embroidery is done on gingham. The squares built into the fabric itself are a great guide so that you don't have to draw a grid or count threads or whatever else people are doing to get nice, even, neat stitches. I pulled the 2 woven ginghams that I already have from my collection and then realized a few days later that these might be a little bit small for chicken scratch, especially this one. I don't know, I'm gonna try it. Maybe I'll just be doing like a more delicate version with fewer threads, but if it doesn't work out, I might be taking a trip to the fabric store. Other than that, we basically just need a needle. There's needles in here. A needle, scissors, and embroidery floss. White if we want to be super traditional, but then I'm not really much of a traditional stitcher. I like to explore these different techniques and then, you know, take what I learned and do it however I want, because isn't that what creativity is all about? So I'm gonna do some in solid white. Like I think maybe I'll do 2 different versions and do one kind of more traditional in the solid white, but then on the second one, I definitely think I'm gonna branch out and add some more colors. I mean, ultimately, the plain white floss was probably either an attempt to mimic the style of lace, or just the result of not having a lot of supplies during the Depression era. And again, in the world of tradition, there seems to be some specificity to the stitches that you can use if you want to actually be doing chicken scratch. Like if you use different stitches, then it's technically not that anymore, but as with the color, I'll probably do one that's more traditional using the proper stitches, and branch out on the other one. Traditionally, it is a straight stitch, or you could call it a running stitch, a cross stitch, a double cross stitch, and then you can weave either circles or ovals through those stitches. That's it. A lot of the more modern sort of branching out styles that I saw and really liked were using what maybe you could still call a woven oval, but kinda was more of a lazy daisy in my opinion, which gives you those sort of daisy floral motifs, which I think is super cute, especially when you bring in other colors. So I'm just gonna start on a corner of each of these materials and try out all of the different stitches, maybe try to copy a few motifs that I've seen in my inspiration images, see what thread weights and stitch sizes work for the 2 of these, and then decide if we're going out today. I didn't want to go out today, but I did just realize I need to go out for another reason, so might as well. I kind of want a green gingham or a yellow one, so I have like a trio. Okay, let's try it. I started with the 1/4 inch red gingham, trying without a hoop because I've seen it done both taut and relaxed in the hand, and using all 6 strands. Feels a little bulky on those double cross stitches, but otherwise I think it works just fine for this size of square. Granted, I had forgotten all the motifs I had seen and couldn't be bothered to get up and check them again, so instead I just made some random basic stitches and called it a solid practice day on that one. Switching to the blue gingham, which is something like 3/16 of an inch squares, I split the floss into 3 strands, much better weight for the more delicate size. I also tried using a hoop this time, which, as hoops tend to do, made it a bit easier to get perfectly taut stitches, but less easy to do the sewing method, or what I still prefer to call the slide method of stitching. You know, like down and up through the fabric in one go. I took the time to look at my inspiration images again and realized that for the woven circles, the straight stitches are done in the center of the mid-colored squares, rather than on the edges as I'd been doing them before. And yeah, this is a fun little look. I feel like that was a decent amount of practice on both. I'm gonna stop by Joann briefly and just see if I can find either another 1/4 inch gingham or maybe even a slightly bigger one. I'd like to get something that doesn't have the texture to it that this one has, but if I can't find anything, it's not the end of the world. I can definitely use both of these. I actually do really like the more delicate look of the smaller squares. I don't know, it just feels a little like less chicken scratchy, but I'm liking it more and more the more I look at it, so I don't know. Then I'm just gonna pack all of this up. I've got some white and then a few other just sort of basic cute colors in there for my non-traditional method. And we're gonna jet off to London. I wonder how much of this stuff I should bring though. Like, I don't wanna bring these entire chunks of fabric, even though they're small. I don't need the whole thing, but I don't really know what I'm making with it, so I don't know. I should definitely cut them down though. I don't know, I'll decide at the last minute. It'll be fine. Of course, Joann had plenty of gingham, so I went with this lovely yellow one that seems slightly bigger in square size than the red. I also found a fat quarter that's significantly bigger squares and figured, why not? It's on sale, which in turn made me decide to cut a fat quarter section out of each material to take with me. Still not quite sure what I'm going to do with each, but in looking at my inspiration images closer, I realized there's an illusion in Chicken Scratch that involves using a floss color that matches the darkest color of the gingham. So I added a few somewhat matching flosses to my little to-go bag and we are off to England. Started and finished my first little bit of stitching before the plane even left the ground. Yeah, it's a pretty speedy stitch style, but also we just took forever to take off. The next day I stitched some more while on an afternoon tea train trip through the countryside, and should you ever find yourself with the opportunity to sip champagne and stitch on a train, I must say it gets my highest recommendation. I've reached a bit of a stopping place on this first piece, not really on purpose, so I thought I'd give a few of my initial thoughts before I carry on. I was sticking with the most common, I don't know, design motif that I kept seeing, which is the sort of 4 straight stitches in the middle of squares with a woven circle and then a double cross stitch in your leftover squares. And I started with white and did sort of the inverse. So I did the pattern one way according to the squares behind, where my woven circles are over the darkest square, and then I switched it so that the double cross stitch is over the darkest square, which is fun to see just sort of the difference that that makes. Because it's basically, are you highlighting the darkest square with the white so that that kind of stands out? Or are you covering it as much as possible with the white so that you have a generally more white appearance, I guess? And then I started doing the exact same thing with a coordinating color, so like a pink that kind of goes with the pinks of this. And I got the first one done, but I'm gonna run out of floss. I only brought 2 of the coordinating colors, and even the white, I brought a bunch of white floss and I'm already running low on it. I think these squares on this particular fabric are bigger than you'd typically see for chicken scratch, although I kind of personally really like this size. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But the combo of the bigger squares and then using all 6 strands, it runs through your floss real fast. Just so you know, if you're doing chicken scratch, you might want to prep with a lot of floss. I also tried numerous different sort of directions or patterns of putting this on so that there would be as little thread as possible on the back of the piece, which, like, that's not an insane amount of floss to be wasting on the back of the piece, especially compared to doing like satin stitch or something, but I never really found the perfect method, or I just keep changing things up because I'm always changing things up. So I do want to do the last stripe of the pink floss once I get some more pink floss. Luckily, every day I go to a place that is full of floss. But yeah, initial thoughts. I like the big squares. I am moving on to the smaller squares, but I enjoyed that. I'm gonna try to do something different now, something a little more varied, get some woven ovals in there and stuff. But it's a really nice kind of repetitive stitch style. I think if you like cross stitch or bargello, you might really enjoy chicken scratch, especially because you don't have that counting element. So with the squares already on there and you just following the lines of the squares, it's that sort of repetitive, calm, therapeutic stitching with none of the counting and keeping track. We love that. I have now started the actual class that I came to England to do, where we're stitching crewel work, which made me think that, you know, once I started that, I wouldn't really be working on this, but that's on like a giant frame. I can bring it home and work on it here, but this I've been working on like while I'm sitting in a restaurant. So I think I'm gonna continue working on this. I'm gonna try the yellow fabric next. Am I? And that would look so pretty with some other colors like purple and green on there. So I think I'm gonna do something with more of the modern style motifs on there. Good times, great chat. I gotta go walk to the palace now for class, so bye. I ended up finding a quilting store in the neighborhood that had anchor floss, so I got a similar pink and did the final rendition of this basic stitch. And actually, I think that's my favorite version. Then I decided to leave the yellow gingham until I get back home, because I kind of want to try properly stabilizing and framing it. Switched to the red gingham instead, where I'm going to try a few versions of another more traditional pattern. Still just utilizing one color of floss and the limited stitches. Getting some woven ovals in there though. Over the course of the next week or so, I stitched on it when I could, on trains, in cafes, in castle gardens. Okay, pardon the random location and lighting, I'm in a houseboat. But I finished my 2 sections on the red gingham. We have the red section and then the white section. They're exactly the same pattern, just done on the proper squares for the color that they are, but I love how they ended up looking very different if you just glance at them. They don't really immediately strike you as being the exact same pattern. I still have a bit to go on my England trip, so I'm gonna switch over to the blue stuff, which I'm going to split all of my floss for and just do 3 strands. And I think for this, what I'm gonna do is some patterns that I've seen where basically you can play around a little bit more with the weaving. So I'm just gonna start by laying down a solid sized grid of the white double cross stitches on the darkest square. Then you can go back with more white or other colors and do like square-shaped weaving or cross-shaped weaving, or like there was one that looked like butterflies. So I'm just going to start with the double cross stitch and then play around with it later on, and probably stick with this until the end of this trip.
I've only just realized that I was apparently using 2 different colors of white floss doing this. I don't even know if you can tell on camera because it's so slight. But this row, and then a few of the X's on this row, is like a bright white, and this is more of a cream white. Whoops. Oh well.
Halfway through my flight home, I figured I should probably stop making double cross stitches and start doing some weaving. But I only got a little bit done before breakfast was served and my back was killing me, so I ended up finishing it over the next few days at home between lots and lots of editing. I'm actually not a huge fan of this one. I don't think the colors that I kind of very quickly threw into my bag actually went together super well or look super good on this blue. But that's okay because it basically turned into an experiment on how to weave on the double cross stitches all the various ways. Like for instance, these right here, the pink and the blue, ended up looking pretty much the same, but they're actually both done differently. They were both stitched in a completely different way and just ended up looking the same at the end. So, you know, stuff like that is good to know, I guess. Fascinating. Ooh. So the yellow piece, move with me. So the most common thing that you'll see chicken scratch on is aprons. Our aprons thing is aprons. Nope, that was actually grammatically correct. I don't really use aprons though. I don't have much need for an apron, so what's the point? I thought instead maybe I'll make a really simple wrap skirt, because I only bought, I think, 2 yards of this, so that's not a ton, but I think I could make a short-ish wrap skirt, or maybe one that's just not a full circle. And then I'll put patch pockets on it and do the chicken scratch on the pockets. I'm gonna do color, but I chose just a purple and a green to go with the white that I think looks really nice with that. I want something florally in the motif, something with like the daisies in it and all of that. Am I still gonna wing it on the design as I go? Probably. Why not? Okay, let's do it. Several hours later, because life happens, I actually started working on this final chicken scratch piece. I had made a bit of a graph plan of the design I want to do-ish. It'll probably change as I go. And then I decided to stabilize the area where I'll be stitching with some interfacing. I want to leave the selvage as the top of the pocket because I love the little fringy bits. This is not the ideal way to frame a piece of fabric for embroidery, but you know what? It'll do. That can be set aside to work on while I'm, you know, watching TV. And in the meantime, I could get the skirt started. Could being the key word here. I thought hard. I did math. I squished and squinched and tried all the ways possible, but my wrap circle skirt wasn't gonna fit on the remaining fabric, even if I cut it down to a shocking half circle. I spent a good while staring into space considering other options. Gingham bloomers would be freaking adorable, but finally, upon the realization that I bought this fabric from Joann and could therefore go buy more, I gave up. And bought more. I was really attached to my wrap skirt idea. Actually, I really wanted to make it a wrap skirt with like an optional pinafore top, so for once I figured I'd just take the simple way out with more material. Let myself have this one. I'm glad I did. This is gonna be adorable. I'll leave the pinafore top to cut out later because I might add some chicken scratch to that too, which means you want extra fabric around it for framing and all that stuff. But I can get the skirt constructed. Super simple, super quick, and leave that to hang for a bit while I get stitching. In the end, I let go of my beloved frayed selvage top in favor of lining the pockets with a second layer of fabric, which should help protect that stitching a little more when I inevitably throw this in the washer and dryer. Finally, I just wanted to make up a simple pinafore top and straps that can detach from the skirt for 2 different looks. And of course, I had to get a little more chicken scratch on there. I revisited the original, more traditional pattern I did weeks ago as a simple stripe across the pinafore top. Only took a few hours to stitch it, and then there was just a bit of sewing left before I had the final product. Well, that was fun. I'm not sure that I have anything new to add since my midpoint thoughts on chicken scratch. It's pretty quick. You can do it in or out of a frame, kind of depending on what fabric you're using. I tried it both ways. Great for the not having to count or keep track of anything. It's a very light on the brain style of stitching. Yeah, those squares are just really, really helpful. Although, you'd be surprised, or maybe I was just surprised, my 2 original gingham fabrics that I had, both were not actual squares. The squares of the pattern were rectangles, noticeably when you look close. You don't really notice it from a distance. So it does just end up with a slightly different look. So if you're choosing fabric for this, don't just grab a gingham. You might want to double check it and make sure that the squares are actually squares. But yeah, it's a really fun look. I actually, in the end, I don't know, I think I kind of like the traditional the most, just with the white. Like the flowers and adding color was so pretty, and I think some of the inspiration images that I found that did the more modern take on it, I really, really liked, but then I didn't want to just directly copy them. And my versions, I just don't like quite as much. But it's like this plain white, simple pattern just kind of automatically looks good on any background color, on any size. It's a really nice way to add some interest and some texture and something fun to a garment you're making. So yeah, highly recommend giving it a try, especially if you need just a simple, easy on the brain embroidery project, a travel embroidery project. It was great for traveling. Another embroidery style marked off the list. Huzzah! What style should I try next? There are still so many on the list. As always, thank you for being here. I don't know if I could say as always. I don't always say thank you for being here. It's always implied. Hi, my baby. Ooh, I need to blow my nose. And having now, but to top it all off, struggling with words cause it's early in the morning. Did Mummy trap you? Where did I put my phone? Oh, it's in my pocket. That's why I have pockets. Okay.
Do you want anything?
Did I do this wrong? Do I want anything from the Apple store?
I mean, I'll be in the mall. Do you want anything from the mall?
From the mall in general?
Yeah.
No, I'm good, my love.
Nice. Ah, that made me nostalgic for travel and England and castles and afternoon tea. Good times. That was a lovely trip. And I love taking embroidery with me when I'm not at home. I think it's almost kind of comforting. What is happening? I just called you comforting. It's kind of comforting. It's like a bit of your at-home routine accompanying you wherever you happen to be. So maybe it can be like a little bit grounding or something. I don't know. And then it is true that later on you look at the embroidery and you tend to remember all the lovely places you were when you stitched it. Anyway, before I wax too poetic, let's move on to my next embroidery exploration, smocking, which I definitely include in the world of embroidery, although I'm not sure that everyone would. Would you? Give me your thoughts. But it's gonna be next regardless, and also, we're just gonna cut right to the chase on this one. If you wanna see the whole drawing ideas out of an apple bit, it's still on the original video. What is smocking? Don't ask me. If I knew, I wouldn't be doing an exploration of it. Smocking is this, and this, and this, and this. Editing me hates it when I do that. I looked up smocking on the interwebs a couple months ago and found the results very confusing, because not only are there multiple types or styles of smocking, but then there's also all these variations that can be done within those types, and then stuff starts to all kind of look like each other and people don't all agree on what exactly is what and what terminology. You know how the internet is nowadays. Which is why I bought the book, because it is much more clear and straightforward, and like, honestly, I'd rather just take one person's experienced opinion than be blasted with the horde. So for this exploration, I am just going to be depending upon the information provided by Ms. Colette Wolfe. Very cool book, by the way, highly recommend. It's not just smocking in here, it's like everything. Everything you could possibly think of. Let's grab some fabric for all of the samples. I'm hoping that I can use basically scraps to do all of the testing and all of the samples. I don't think I need that big of a piece of fabric. And I would like to test out some very different fabrics eventually. I think it would be best to start with a fairly sturdy woven material, but it would be cool to eventually try some very different materials and see how smocking looks on those. Oh, you know what? Now that I came in here, I actually think this yellow stuff that I just made my, that I recently made my randomly selected dress out of would be pretty good. This is like a nice solid woven. Let me dig it out of here. Okay, we've got several fabrics of varying thicknesses and weights and types, all woven, because I don't think smocking is really something you want to be doing on knit. I don't know though, maybe I'll try it. First one up in the book is English smocking. Hi, Bubby. So grab your crumpets and tea. Alrighty. Pay no attention to the massive bush growing on our table. I just trimmed some of our hedges back there, and then I was like, I can't throw these out. They're so pretty. I'll just make a little arrangement. And then somebody on Instagram said it's a California Christmas tree. Yeah, English smocking. So the first thing, or the first step of smocking is creating the pleats. Then the second step is attaching those pleats with the decorative stitching. So we just need a grid of dots. There's also pleating machines that you can do. Not even really machines, but just little like hand pleaters. I will probably get one of those someday because I find them very cool, but today is not that day. These things have a lot more smell than you would expect just a green plant to have. This is gonna take me a hot second. I think I'm gonna go ahead and grid 2 pieces because they show 2 different options for how to do the stitching across for either like a bunch of small pleats or fewer larger pleats. So we'll start out by trying both of those. Once we've got the grid marked on the fabric, we take a sturdy thread, this is quilting thread, and run gathering stitches according to those dots. That secures the pleats, so then we can place the decorative stitching on top before releasing them again. Okay, so that's a bit of a faff, isn't it? I can see why people like the little cranky, rolly machine thing for the pleating. I ended up doing a third example with the same pleating style as the yellow, just in at one dot, out at the next dot, but with only ½ inch in between each dot, because I wanted to see how that would compare to this one, which is in and out at each dot. And I'm not really sure how it compares. I think this one is just a little more like soft of accordion, if that makes sense. I don't really know how else to describe it. And this one is a little more sharp or compact of pleats. Now we do the embroidery, which means I need embroidery floss. That would have been helpful. Forgot about that. Let's get some. Hi, pretty puppy. Do you need to go pee-pee? Y'all, our little mandarin tree, Satsuma mandarins, I believe they are. It's just so cute and it's doing so well and it makes me so happy. We only planted it in July, I think. I mean, obviously, like, it was already decently tall when we bought it. And it's really covered in fruit and they're all ripening right now, so I'm kind of just picking one every week. I picked one yesterday and it was good, but it's not like as flavorful as it should be fully ripe. So I'm just gonna keep picking one every week until I know they're actually ripe and really flavorful. But oh my God, I love having fruit in my backyard. I was fascinated with the concept of picking fruit off of trees and being able to eat it when I was a kid, because it just wasn't something that we experienced much. And now I finally have that for the first time, even though it's just a little small tree. Like, aren't fruit trees amazing? They can be so small and still produce fruit. Not just one or two fruits either, like that's producing a lot of fruit. I have dreams of so many more. I will turn this normal house in a normal neighborhood into a freaking orchard if it's the last thing I do. Anyway, we're embroidering. I basically just want to test out every single stitch that they share here. These are all normal embroidery stitches that by name I already know, but judging from her illustrations, they just look slightly different because of how you're passing them through the pleats. I will say the downside of this book is that it's all black and white, and I am realizing now that my brain definitely has a thing where it's like, I'd understand that better in color, and I'm not sure why that is, but it just is. Over 2, under 1, is that what I'm seeing right here? Okay. I'm also trying to keep all of these kind of neat because I can't help being like, oh my God, that's a lot of thread and I want to reuse them. She does say that this English smocking is the one that's supposed to give you like elasticity, kind of like shirring would, which I can't really grasp how that works, but I'm just gonna trust that that is true. I think I will grasp it once I see it. You're not having fun unless you're glaring at your thing. But like, how is that stretchy? That just put it super tight together. I think this is a trust the process thing. We're trusting, we're moving on. It's hard to keep a straight line. That is what I'm observing, at least. Like, this one's not too bad, I don't think. This one feels a little crooked. I don't know how tight I'm supposed to be pulling these, which, quite frankly, the answer might be in the book, and I just didn't read it because I'm bad at reading instructions. My line definitely went crooked that time. You can see it go blonk. But that's okay, we're just practicing. I want to try honeycomb smocking next. Yeah, I think I'll do regular honeycomb on the top half and then surface honeycomb on the bottom half, and then move on to the others. Wish me luck. It's a little clunky or unwieldy to hold onto this fabric and sew on the thick pleats, but my biggest issue was getting straight lines. I ended up just marking a line with a pin so that I'd have a guide, and even then, it was a bit wobbly at times. I also just removed the center cable stitches so I could honeycomb the whole thing, because it felt like I could use the practice. As predicted, once I pulled out all the gathering stitches, my noggin finally grasped how the stretchy effect works. This looks so cool, but I'm a little confused by the way it wants to pull inward and curl forward when stretched. I kind of thought it would curve backwards away from the stitches, although physics have now come knocking and I'm lightly getting it. Is that even physics? I don't know, y'all. After some general inspection, I also removed the outline stitches at the top and the bottom, which allowed it to stretch out a little more evenly, I suppose. But yeah, I think the weirdness of the stretching might have to do with where I tied off the ends. Like maybe it shouldn't be on the top of a pleat like this. Also, maybe it just acts a bit weird because it's a small swatch, or because the pleats are so deep. Good thing we're about to do a whole bunch more. The honeycomb effect is really cool though. Woke up the next morning with a headache. Have you been drinking enough water? Is that water you're drinking now? Well, what better time to curl up on the couch, cuddle the puppy, he just had a bath, and do some smocking. All right, thoughts on English smocking. The shorter pleats, smaller pleats, are definitely way easier to hold on to while sewing. And then of course the whole thing would be easier if you don't have all of your threads hanging off the end. Like, I really just couldn't stand to waste all of this by cutting it off shorter. But it would be way easier to tie off the ends like the book says to, and cut them off so that one, your pleats stay nicely together and aren't like extending on one side, and also two, you don't have a bunch of threads going everywhere. But yeah, the 1 inch high, thick, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what you would do with this. It's too thick. It looks really cool. This is much more what you would expect to see on a garment. I did go and steam all of these really hard. I pinned them down on my ironing board a little bit stretched out and then hit them with a bunch of steam. So that's been helping with them just laying flat and not wanting to curl up on the ends. I definitely like honeycomb best, both regular honeycomb and then this is surface honeycomb. I also really like the diamond stitch I did a bit of on this one. This was much more exploring different stitches. There's a whole lot more variations in this book alone, but I feel like this was a good intro to English smocking for me. So that means it is time to move on. Next! Welcome back, we've moved on. Direct smocking. So as far as I can tell, this is the same as English smocking, only you don't use any of these threads. Why did I save them? I think they'll come back in for another one. But this is like, instead of making the grid and then doing the gathering threads and then doing the decorative stitches and then removing the gathering threads, this one, you make the grid and then you just use the decorative stitches. You're saving a step. It begs the question, if you could have just done this in the first place, what was the point of the gathering stitches? I'm assuming you kind of get neater, tighter, smaller pleats by actually doing the pleats first. But who am I to say? I know nothing about this. This says that direct smocking is not elastic like English smocking is. Once again, my brain is not quite grasping? Woo, words. Once again, my brain is not quite grasping why. Let's drink more water. Okay, let's try this. Okay, good morning. Direct smocking. It's definitely faster than the English smocking just because you are leaving out that step of gathering everything together. Hello, Trotty Paws. However, it also just looks completely different, which is cool because it looks different in a cool way. So I found that I had to be a little more precise with the stitching because, you know, I had to make sure that I was getting the dots correctly. But because it's just sort of a more flat piece of fabric in your hand, it was a little easier to hold on to. But like, this is honeycomb stitching or honeycomb smocking, and this is also honeycomb smocking, but in the English style, and they look entirely different. I think because on the direct smocking, you get this fold in the center of the diamond that comes to the surface rather than being set downward like it is on the other one. I don't know. I mean, I do know. That's what it is. But yeah, you get this triangle pattern instead of the diamond pattern, and I really like it. It's just completely different. But this I could really see as, ooh, the top of a thing with skirt. It also helps that it's nice and flat. It's not inch thick pleats like the other one. This one I did with diamond smocking, which again, this is diamond smocking, and also this is diamond smocking, but in the English style. And again, they look completely different. Like, you can see how they are the same thing, but doing it on the existing set pleats versus doing it on a flat piece of fabric just really alters what the final product looks like. I had to very much trust the process as I was sewing this one, because yeah, it looked wonky for a long time. Yeah, really enjoyed those. Direct smocking, cool. We are moving on, because we still have 2 more to go. So what I noticed when I did look up smocking on the interwebs was that English smocking with the decorative stitching, and I guess direct smocking as well, is much more of a classic look. You tend to see it a lot more on kids' clothing, though not exclusively, of course. It's sort of the old school style of smocking. It has a very traditional and classic appearance, whereas North American smocking, or I believe some people were just calling it Canadian smocking, looks like what we're into now kind of thing. Like, this seems like the more contemporary interest in smocking. No decorative stitches, just the fabric manipulation. What's funny is that North American smocking is basically just the backside of English smocking. Or the backside of direct smocking, it's the backside of both of those. Like, if I stretched out my honeycomb direct smocking, you can see what is the lozenge pattern, I believe, in North American smocking. I think the cool thing is that you're not supposed to see any stitching, so it just looks like the fabric is kind of magically forming these really interesting shapes. This is what I saved all of this thread for, because you don't want decorative thread. You want a nice sturdy thread that you're not really gonna notice. So I'll be using that. But yeah, once again, we just gotta draw some grids first, so give me about an hour. Not that long, I've gotten faster. Well, that took me 40 minutes because I decided to get all creative with my fabric choices, and it was way harder to draw the dots visibly. On to stitching. Starting right on the edge of my fabric probably wasn't the most helpful thing to do, but the instructions for this style were super clear and I got into the stitching rhythm right away. Look at that, it's already starting to look like something. I did also realize that since you're stitching on the back of the fabric, if you come up on dot 1, you're leaving the knot on the front of the fabric. So I shall fix that on the next 20 or so rows. This is the lattice pattern, and first of all, let's note that this North American method also creates a slightly elasticated final piece. Some of this looks really good, or like it's supposed to, but I'm not really sure what causes some areas to not want to fold properly. At first, I thought I had just done some of the stitches wrong, like I had caught the wrong dot in the grid or something, but I carried on being extra careful and still got some of the little weirdness. So then I thought maybe it was the points that I didn't pull tight enough? I'm not sure though. If you know anything about smocking, feel free to advise. The lozenge pattern is super cool looking and quite easy. Didn't have any weird possible mistake bits on this one. But yeah, it's so nice in this satiny material, and look how neat the back is. Of course, you'd want to do this in a matching thread for the real thing, and I could probably do smaller pickup stitches too. I am notorious for my giant pickup stitches. Notorious, I say! Hardest part of this one was just trying to see my dots on this dark fabric. So we are switching to a bright and floral one for the flower pattern because it seemed fitting. I also did this grid an inch apart instead of half an inch because I figured big flowers would be fun. This is another sort of trust the process one, just because it can look really different afterwards depending on which parts you pull forward or push back. If you leave all the middle bits pushed to the back, it actually has this sort of puffy quilted look to it. Very neat, but not really reminiscent of a flower. Then you can start pushing those in-between areas forward and you get a kind of pinwheel seeming thing. I think you'd need to do the variation where the gathered bits are more separated in order for it to really look flower-like. Okay, North American smocking is super cool. Not sure if I'd say it's my favorite of what I've tried so far, but Kinda's my favorite. I just love playing around with the fabric like that, and it's kind of magical. I don't know, I think when I can see the decorative stitching, my brain is more like, yeah, okay, this is pretty and logical. And when you can't see the stitching, I mean, you can kind of, because I don't make small stitches, but you can barely see the stitching. It's just kind of like, how is the fabric doing that? Ooh. The lozenge pattern is actually my favorite, but that might just be because of the fabric that I put it on. I don't know, it's very clean, and I like the way that the folds fall on this material. I really like the lattice one, but I don't know what I was doing wrong to get these sort of like weird bloopy spots. And it'd be a really interesting thing to just fiddle around with on your own as well, like rather than just following a pattern, just make a grid and come up with some new direction of stitching on it and see what it ends up looking like on the other side. It would be a cool thing to experiment more with rather than just explore what already exists. But not right now, because we have one more. Alrighty, y'all, last smocking style, I assume. It's the last one she mentions in this book, Italian smocking. This one is slightly intimidating if you just look at the patterns in the book. I fully understand it, but the patterns are all like really intricate. It kind of reminds me of sashiko patterns, but then like if you pulled on them at the end. So we've got two types or processes here, contoured and shirred. Contoured smocking, Italian, contoured smocking, comma, Italian, is you're doing stitches across like this that you'll eventually pull to bring the fabric together. But instead of just going straight across with all of them, some of them you go down and across and up and like this. And so you get like a shifting of your pleats, a puckering of the fabric that makes it interesting. The shirred Italian smocking style is you're going across like this, but you skip some sections. So you can basically create like raised, puffy motifs, designs throughout your shirring because you've left them open. It's an area that's not being gathered, so then when everything around it is gathered, it's gonna poof out from the front. I of course wanna try one of each. It's so much grid making though. So here's my thought. I think I'm gonna do a grid, like draw a grid on like I've been doing for the shirred one, but for the contoured one, I wanna try just using gingham so that instead of having to mark on a grid, I have a grid. That means I just need to draw one more grid. Huzzah! I'm starting with the shirred version and I decided to do a 1/4 inch grid. So yeah, that took forever. Looking forward to that gingham. As predicted, it is very sashiko-like in feel while stitching. Once again, using a sturdy but not decorative thread because it shouldn't be showing in the end. And then it's just up and down in rows across the fabric, picking up the dots in the proper pattern. Does require some focus to make sure you're getting the pattern right. And now for the satisfying gathering. Okay, the kind of satisfying gathering. Well, maybe not so satisfying, but super cool! I've gotta go steam this one flat, but you can imagine something like this as a fancy floofy cuff on a billowy white shirt. And using the gingham was absolutely a smart idea. Highly recommend if you just want to practice some smocking and don't want to have to draw a grid. But it was especially good for this contoured method because unlike the shirring method where you're picking up the dots, for this one you're actually doing even size stitches, one on the front, one on the back. More satisfying pulling. decided not to try doing it all in one go this time, since the book does say to do 2 at a time. I'ma do 4 at a time, but close enough. Again, a very cool look, although I suddenly got very confused about which side of the shirred version is actually the front. I think it's supposed to be the one where you can see the threads, but doesn't the other side look so much better? Observe. Cuff. Anyway, the contoured version is so fascinating too, especially with the gathered gingham making stripes like this. Oh y'all, we're getting crazy wind again. I enjoyed Italian smocking way more than I thought I would, and it did require more focus, I guess, than any other of the other styles, almost like in the same way that counted cross stitch would. I was sitting on the couch counting while Matt was trying to watch videos, and I was just over there going 3, 1, skip 3, 3, 2, skip 3, 3, 1. I'm sure he enjoyed it. I will note that this technique has absolutely no stretch because you are gathering all of your pleats together and then you're leaving those gathering stitches in. So I'd be interested to try this on like a larger grid or maybe a more like uneven grid. I don't know, I'd be interested to try this in different ways because both of these ended up a lot of very small and tight pleats, which looks awesome, but think of how much fabric you would need to do something with this style. Even just, you know, when I was like, oh, it'll be a cute cuff, that's not quite half. So you would need more than double this amount to make a cuff on my wrist. And also because it's not stretchy, it would have to be an open cuff of some kind with like a button closure or something. Anyway, you'd need a lot. Like, imagine trying to do that on a shirt. This was already a decently long piece of fabric. You would need an insanely long piece of fabric, and then you still have to do all the gathering with one thread all the way across. I mean, I suppose you could do it in sections. It could get intense if you wanted to actually make a thing with Italian smocking, but maybe on a larger grid. It would be easier or better or quicker? Who's to say? You might be able to say, have any of you ever tried any of these various styles of smocking? Any of the 4? Is there a kind of smocking that is not in this book that I didn't try because it wasn't in the book? I do really like my 10 samples here, and I'm glad I did them on different fabrics. I mean, the thing is, I did 10 different variations of smocking, and there's still so many more that you could do. Like, in the North American smocking world, there are so many different patterns that I saw online. There are more patterns just in the book. In all of these, at the end of each section, she notes all of these different variations that you can do of like changing your grid, doing an uneven grid or a grid that gets smaller or gets bigger as you go. I don't know, there's just so many more things you could do. And despite having just done 10, I am tempted to keep experimenting and exploring. But no, I'm not over it, not at all. In fact, my brain is on fire with all sorts of ideas. A dress with honeycomb smocking, a shirt with lozenge smocking in the front, a big billowy blouse with the Italian smocking on the cuffs and maybe English smocking around the collar. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to try, but there's also a lot more that goes into making a smocked garment than just the stitching. Basically, completing this exploration, this project, is just adding more projects to the list, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Now I know how to smock someday soon, I shall smock again. But just like, don't hold your breath for it or anything because you'll pass out. Are you still hearing me? Ooh, phone. Hello. Life is concerning. Hello? What are you hiding? Between the drinks and subtle things. But looking at her, I'm sorry. Bless you. Smocking is still forever floating through my project list. I've made a smocked pillow, but there's just so much that you can do with it, potentially. Smocked lampshade? I would love to see how that affects the light coming through it. But we have now reached my most recent embroidery exploration, which was recent enough that I am still working on the final long-term piece as we speak. Hey kids, you want to build some thumb calluses? About a year ago, having worked on my freehand sashiko-inspired embroidery for, at best, a couple months, my brain moved on to the next thing, as it does always. What would be my next embroidery exploration? Don't worry about how long this one is gonna take. Have I mentioned there's a list? Of course there's a list. I was super into this no-frame running stitch feel, so I landed on kanta as the next thing I wanted to try out in the needle arts world. And then I went searching for a book, because when I want to try out a technique that originates in a place or culture that I know nothing about, I like to get a book written by an expert. It's easier nowadays than trying to figure out which online resources are actually legit. There weren't a ton of options though. English language books about a very specific Bengali craft form, apparently rare. By grand coincidence, this book just so happened to be on pre-order at the exact time that I looked. Not sponsored or anything, but it is now out, obviously, if you want to get it. It is a really good book if you are at all interested in the art form that is kanta. I mean, first of all, it's just beautifully written and created, but also it goes into so many details about where kanta came from, what it means, how it's being used nowadays, how to stitch it yourself. Highly recommend. So it is now like a year later, and I finally finished that freehand embroidery piece and turned it into a coat. Loads of fun. So I need another embroidery project. Not like I need another embroidery project. I do have 2 long-term embroidery projects still going strong, but I like to have 3, or rather I like to have a 3rd one that is specifically a travel piece. I cannot take these giant frames anywhere. And yeah, I'm still set on trying kanta, obviously, otherwise that would have been a really weird introduction to a totally different subject. Oh, you're so squish. I want to try out a couple different methods because the book tells us about classification by form, basically unembellished kanta versus embellished kanta. Unembellished kanta was and is for very practical use. It's very similar to hand quilting, I guess. Basically just running stitches done across layers of fabric. Traditionally, old saris that they would stack up and layer together and then stitch through so that fabric that was too thin to be used on its own anymore could be recycled into these nice thick quilts. Within embellished kanta, she gives us 4 different classifications: illustrative, abstract, geometric, botanical, and geofloral or geofigurative. While all of them use running stitch in some form, I believe, some also utilize a bunch of other embroidery stitches, especially pattern darning in different forms. I'm particularly drawn to the abstract geometric style of running stitch with detached chain stitch used to create these simple but beautiful patterns. And then I was also struck by the quilting stitch section, where she shows how they quilted around motifs with these tiny monotone stitches, so it just kind of creates amazing texture without being super visual. I want to play around with a few methods, but I do want to make it clear first of all that I am not an expert on kanta. I really only know what I've learned about in this book, so if you want to know more about it, I highly recommend doing some research on your own or getting a great book like this. I'm also not going to be replicating specific cultural motifs here. Like with sashiko, I could very specifically stitch the 36 patterns that were in the book, but this is more about exploring the feeling and the method of kanta. For starters, I want to do the practical, straight running stitch, piecing together fabric style, but shrunk down. I don't need a full quilt, and using my scrap fabric. I really don't want to get massive here, but I have done like a very small sample before. Where did I put that? There she blows. I sat down with my sister and my stepmom when they were visiting a while back, and we kind of played around with the style a bit. So I do want to do something larger than this. Scraps, 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 scraps. Wah! I'm gonna use this very ugly piece of fabric as like layer 1, the backing basically, just because then it's easier to piece everything together. You know? Also, sorry if this is like anybody's favorite color or something. I've called this ugly in videos twice. That's a solid size though. I think we have appropriately sized up. Observe. And I'm gonna stick with all of my quilting cotton scraps because it's easier. I'm so bad at choosing color schemes. It always just ends up being rainbow. I like that piece though. I do want to go with slightly bigger scraps here because I'm doing such a big piece. Like I don't want to be sewing this tiny little section of stuff on. This is better. You know what? I'm just gonna stick with the colors of this striped piece, or like similar-ish. So no blue. That's my biggest section. All right, well that may have been a poor choice, but oh well. Kind of need some brown. Have I ever used brown ever in my life? Honestly, that might already be kind of enough, but I wouldn't mind throwing a few actual fat quarters in here. Oh, there's some brown. No. Oh, the kitties. Yeah, I need to do some more patchworking. Kind of like that with it, actually. Why do I have, like, no purple? Sacrilege. Purple's my favorite. I've seen a couple different ways to do piecing like this. You can kind of add new pieces as you sew, but I really wanted to lay everything out first and be picky about my color placement and design and such. So once it was ironed, I tried to cut each piece down as little as possible, mainly just trimming off anything sticking out oddly so it would be more rectangular, and then I folded under any top-facing edges as I went and pinned it all down thoroughly. You're so precious. That was really enjoyable. I was actually in kind of a blah mood this morning, and the combination of doing this and listening to happy music was quite rejuvenating. 'Tis now the stitching time, but why is so much of your fur already on this? Big yawn. I kind of want to continue using my like leftover bits of thread that didn't end up in the last embroidery piece. I didn't use them because they're all boring colors, but a lot of the boring colors are brown. There is brown on this design, so it kind of feels like the perfect time to use them all up, right? I guess I'll commit to the brown. That makes it sound like I've decided to poop. Commit to the brown. I'm gonna do them all in this direction. That's the thing that I've noticed looking at the different examples of this sort of basic method of kanta is they only do them in one direction. They don't hashtag crosshatch, and I want them to be perpendicular to the stripes on this one piece. In the videos that I've seen of people making actual kanta quilts, they leave it on the ground and they stitch in a forward or like away from them direction, which I find fascinating. Instead of like picking it up and having it in your hands, they like weigh it down and make sure it's all flat and everything on the ground, and then literally they're like doing stitches like this forward. It's so cool to watch. So I'm gonna try that. I don't know if I'll need to move onto the hardwood floors, because I think doing it on carpet, like I might sew the whole thing to the carpet. I don't know, we'll see. I might not do it today. I have a meeting tomorrow, so that'd be a perfect time to just sit there and stitch. This is pretty, I like it. Are you the cutest potato in the whole world? Are you side-eyeing? Bombastic side-eye. Stitching on the carpet did work, although it probably would have been a good idea to vacuum first. Oh well, everything is dog fur, and dog fur is everything. Whereas Sashiko was very much about precision, working on a grid, trying to make all the stitches exactly the same size, Kanta, or at least my inspired by version here, was much more organic and free-flowing. The lines don't have to be straight, the stitches don't have to be the same size. Instead of trying to stack as many stitches as possible onto the needle at once, I realized it's better to just do 2 at a time. I tried the forward or away from you stitching, but found it was easier for me to sit at the side of the piece and work back and forth that way. Less crawling around needed then. Eventually, I rolled up the 2 ends and moved to the couch though, just to help my back out a little, and then I also started using my tiny pliers to pull the needle through because, oh my goodness, it was hurting my thumb. I've actually got the start of a giant blister on the end of it, and that was from stitching like 1/8 of this thing. And I know every time I say stitching hurts in any way, people start crying, thimble, thimble, thimble. But this blister is very specifically from the act of pulling the needle out of the fabric, what I'm doing right there with the pliers, not from pushing it in or doing the stitches themselves. So I don't know that there's a thimble that would help with that. I guess I have seen like little rubber thumb gripper things that would maybe facilitate in the pulling. I don't know, seems like there would still be a lot of pressure on the thumb even if the grip was better. The pliers work great though. I was gonna completely finish this piece before starting with method 2. I am currently, oh, that's pinned. Currently that far through, which is not that much, like 1/4. But because my thumb legit needs some resting time, I figured I'd go ahead and start method number 2 of stitching, and then I can kind of trade off between the 2. I am planning to do this method on just 1 piece of fabric, so it should theoretically not be as intense upon the thumb. I want to do something I've already washed, just in case I end up utilizing this chunk of stitching for something like in a garment later. I could do this pink stuff that I lined my freehand embroidery jacket with. It's a beautiful color and it's, you know, thick and kind of structured without being too thick. Some fabric has such a good snipping sound. That would be something very random to do, but just like get a bunch of different fabric types and record the sound of each of them being cut. I don't know what the purpose of that would be, but it sounds like fun. Okay, not too big of a sample. I'll probably start by doing like a quick hand-sewn hem around the edges. Will I? Scratch that. I'm gonna go run it through the machine really fast. So what we are trying here is the running stitch with detached chain. Oh yeah, I almost forgot she has a bunch of interviews in this book from people who specialize in various forms of kanta art and such. So she's got a bunch of absolutely beautiful examples here. And again, I love that like, it's not really super duper precise. There's differences in the stitch size and stuff, and it still looks really cool. The grape one is fun, but I like this stools holding hands. First of all, because the concept of stools holding hands with each other is adorable, but I like how many of the detached chain stitches there are, so I might try that one. They do really small running stitches around this one, rather than like the massive running stitches I've been doing on method 1, so that'll be an interesting difference. Yeah, let me throw a hem on here, and then we will get started with stools holding hands. They're friends! Oh yeah, I was gonna choose a thread, but I do have some orange in here, and I didn't want to use orange on the first piece, because there's no orange in the fabric. Yeah, orange on pink, that looks cool. Really trying to use up all this old thread. I will do it! I will accomplish it! After hemming the edges, I went ahead and drew on lines 1/4 of an inch apart, because if I want the pattern to show up clearly, I need the stitching to be somewhat straight. I then kind of drew out what the pattern of detached chain stitches is, just on a sticky note, so that it would settle into my brain a bit, and finally, I went for it. Doing the much tinier stitches is definitely a big change for me, but adding the detached chain stitches is pretty easy and flows well. I realized after just a bit that once again the forward or away from you motion of stitching works really well here. Tis tiny and hard to see, but that's one row down. Took about 20 minutes to stitch that. Looking at the examples again, I noticed that my 1/4 inch apart lines are technically kind of spread out for this style. Most of them look much closer packed together. I considered doubling up and doing a row between each of my lines, but I decided against it because I wanted to. Or I didn't want to. I also looked closely to see if the stitches were always coming from the same direction, which you can tell by the teardrop shape of the detached chain stitches. And while it looked like most of the time they are all done from the same side, there were some examples where the direction changed, so I decided to alternate each row. I really enjoyed stitching this piece. The single layer of fabric is indeed easier on my thumb, but I mostly like that the running stitch is broken up by the detached chain, which combined with having to keep track of the chain stitch pattern meant that this method just took a little more focus or brain power, like just enough to hold my interest a little higher while still remaining a very methodical, calm form of creation. So once again, I'm not actually done with method 2 or method 1 at this point. This is where we've landed with method 2, so maybe a third of the way done. I'm really enjoying this one. But I am leaving on a road trip in a few days, which once again, I keep mentioning this in videos that are gonna come out after this road trip is long over. It's already happened by now when you're seeing this video. I wanted to bring some of these along with me though, to work on. I love doing embroidery while I'm traveling. This one I can easily take with me, but I'd probably finish in like 3 days, and then I would have nothing for the next 17 days. This one, I'm not sure if I want to take with me, because it's kind of big and bulky. So, because of that, I thought, let me go ahead and get method 3 going. This is the one that I have no intention of finishing in this video. I'm going to try to finish these 2 in this video. Method 3, I want to be a long-term embroidery project that I can be working on for at least several months. I like having a travel piece that is just there and around, but I do want to get it started in this video. This is going for the more directional quilting kind of method. It's definitely inspired by that quilting method of kanta where the quilting stitches kind of blend into the background and go around motifs. But I don't really want to sew through multiple layers of fabric. So like this one, I think I'm just gonna do it on one piece of fabric. And I want to just, I don't know, I want to do like a simple design that is completely made out of those running stitches done in the outline. This is something that I don't know that it's specifically the traditional kanta stitching style, but the first time that I ever saw running stitch used in this like filling in method was in reference to kanta, which is why I'm doing it this way. I once again need a piece of fabric. I don't want to get up. Back in the closet we go. I do have some white linen somewhere in here. Where is a great question. And y'all know me, I don't often have like natural fiber fabrics, especially not linen, but I bought this one just to be like I'll have it on hand in case I ever want to do something specifically on linen. And granted, I was definitely thinking more like, making a garment out of this, but I wouldn't mind taking a chunk of it for an embroidery piece. Yeah, how do I feel about this? What else do I have? Okay, I've got 2 different gray materials, and I have sort of a looser weave yellow here. I actually think that I might do a stitch test on all 4 of these fabrics, like literally just run a needle through it once and see what it feels like. This is being very particular, but I want to enjoy the feeling of stitching this, and there are certain fabrics, there's some of them in the method 1 piece that I'm doing, that just, ooh, they are not fun to pull a needle through. And whether that has to do with the fiber content, the fiber type, or the weave style, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm just gonna very quickly run a needle and thread through all 4 of these, and the winner will be the one that is most pleasant to my fingers. Okay, I don't even know where these came from, but these needles are absolutely giant, and I really want to use them for this. They're also very sharp. Love that. Fabric number 1. This is very soft. It's quite an enjoyable feel, but it looks like a pretty tight weave. So I feel like it's not going to enjoy the needle. Oh, it does enjoy the needle. Oh, this feels very nice. I mean, maybe it's because this needle is freaking amazing, but the fabric loves it. Oh, it pulls through very easily. Okay, this one gets a yes, but let's try the others. Another gray, this one is much more structured. Again, a pretty tight weave. Okay, maybe it's these needles. Maybe they are just so sharp and amazing. I need to switch to using one of these on method 1 over here, because these things are a delight. Or is the fabric just a delight? Oh, love that. All right, again, we got a yes. This one, pretty loose weave, so it should definitely take to the needle very easily. Oh yeah. Yep. I'd mostly be concerned about this one not being structured enough, but nah, I think it'd be fine. Yeah, okay. I don't think my needle test is actually going to help me decide here, because all of these are great. So this is the linen, and it's definitely the thinnest out of these fabrics. Oh. Okay, you know what? That's still honestly perfectly fine in feel, but compared to the 3 that I just did, it's more unpleasant. It doesn't slide through quite as well, and it's not gonna be as structured as I want. So considering I'd rather save this linen for a garment, this is a no. Okay, I gotta test this real fast just because all of that was so nice. And stitching on this with this needle right here that I've been using has been so unpleasant. So, do I need to switch needles? Nope. Okay. Oh, nope. Not at all. It's... Whew. I think it might be this background fabric, but also this green fabric right here, which thankfully I have finished stitching on, has been very unpleasant to stitch through. All right, so switching needles is gonna do nothing for that. Back to method 3. I think I'm actually gonna go with this gray stuff because it felt like a hot knife through butter. I cut out a decent sized chunk and then started hemming the edges.
Is this a stretchy fabric? What the? How did I not notice that? Yo, we can't do a stretchy fabric. That's gonna be a pain in the butt. How did I get this far without noticing? Look at this. Like, that is some pretty straight up stretch. Rewind.
Okay, so I chose the yellow instead, because it's definitely non-stretch. Cut out a decent sized chunk, hemmed the edges, and then laid it out on the table and started sketching a very simple design. I was trying to do it on paper first so I'd have no excess lines on the fabric, but that went south pretty fast, so let's hope the heat erasable pin comes out of this fabric. It usually does. Yep, we're going with a flamingo and monstera leaves, cause pink, green, and yellow seem like a really good color combo to me. Also, flamingos are cute. Okay, since I'm using the bigger needle already, and this is a pretty loose weave, and I no longer have any leftover floss to use up. Hooray! I technically do. I still have 2 grays. Because of all of that, I thought this would be a good chance to use my pearl cotton floss, because I have a bunch of it. What would I need here? Maybe 2 types of green, black, white, pink. I haven't used this stuff in ages. And then I'm also supposed to fill the entire background of this. The whole thing should be covered in stitching when I'm done, but I want the background to be monochrome, so it would all be in yellow. I don't really want to buy more, and I have no idea how much this is going to end up using, so I might do a slightly darker yellow as well and kind of blend them, or I could do like the darker yellow closer to the leaves, almost like it's in shadow, and then do the lighter yellow towards the more open areas. That'd be interesting. I just want to pull everything now because I'm not even gonna start this yet. Maybe, probably not. I might start it before I leave. Who's to say? I'm actually kind of ahead of schedule right now, so I have like a couple of days with not too much on my to-do list. Regardless, I want to be able to pack up every floss color I need for this so I can take it with me, because I don't know how much stitching I'll be able to do on this road trip. One never knows. But one likes to be prepared, and by one, I mean me. That's a solid gradient, so I'll just take all of those. We'll figure it out as we go. And then in the green world, I think that'll work. I might not end up using the darkest ones because they feel just a little dark for monstera leaves anyway, but I will bring them just in case. That's what we got. That's what we're gonna use. I was planning to start by outlining every area in the appropriately colored floss, so then I could iron the piece and erase all of the drawn lines, but I immediately got distracted filling in the base of a leaf. I'm already enjoying this so much. The feeling of the stitching is quite delightful. I can stack so many stitches on the needle at once and it still slides through with such ease. There's definitely gonna be some puckering of the fabric as I go, which can send my brain into alert mode just because I spent so long in the taut fabric in a hoop side of embroidery. But I like that stitching in the hand like this encourages me to relax on that front. I'm really excited to work on this one. I have already packed it up for the trip. Like, I genuinely hope that it takes a long time to stitch so that I can work on it for a long time, you know? But for now, I've mainly been working on method 1, and it's almost done. I don't even think you can see the part that's not done on camera, can you? All of that is done. That little bit on the bottom is not done. It's maybe like 1/8 of it left to do, and I am leaving on my road trip tomorrow morning, so I might honestly finish this one tonight, but regardless, method 1 is staying here. I didn't really want to take this whole thing with me anyway. Method 2 is in here. Hello, what a nice baby. Does somebody need lovin's? Okay. He's about to go to the sitter. We call it going to grandma's house because he absolutely loves our current dog sitter. So it's like a special thing that he gets to go there, which makes me feel so much better about traveling. Anyway, method 2, method 3, these are both going with me. Cue the travel stitching montage. Turns out I didn't stitch much at all during these 3 weeks on the road, maybe because I was driving so much, but also because I was very much enjoying reading during most of my downtime. I ended up getting nowhere close to method 3, but I did make a little progress on method 2. Very, very slow progress. This one, y'all, it's a tricksy one. This stitch style or design or whatever it is did not seem slow when I first started it, but it's pretty slow. Partially, I think, due to this fabric. It was never pleasant to stitch on, unfortunately, which is why I did all of that stitch testing for method 3. If you're gonna do a slow stitching project that's gonna take time, you want it to feel pleasant to stitch. And this, unfortunately, just did not feel that pleasant to stitch. You'd think it's one piece of fabric, it would be easy to get that needle through, but I literally started using the pliers in the end for this as well. I don't know. I don't know the science behind, like, why some fabrics are just delicious on a needle and then other fabrics are like, no, I will feel terrible. We are done though. I've been home for a few days and I had some time to finish stitching not only method 1, but also method 2. So let's iron them, ironing first, and then take a look. Well, this has been a really incredible exploration. I've super enjoyed this one, even if it did blister up my thumb a little bit. Really, it just put some calluses there. I like toughening up my thumb, and I know I should use a thimble. I really don't like them. I just don't. But I'm so pleased with both of these pieces. They look so amazing. I mean, this is what I love about embroidery. I mean, there's so many things I love about embroidery, but you can do these complex pieces that are really detailed. You can do a bunch of different stitches and have all this different texture, and those look amazing, but you can also just do a really simple stitch. Like, running stitch has to be the most basic embroidery stitch out there, which is why I think every culture in the world pretty much has come up with their version of running stitch based embroidery. It's so simple, and yet it's so effective and so beautiful. And I think what I really like about Kanta is how they've used it in these different ways, like using it in a very purposeful, what's the word I'm looking for? Practical way to upcycle materials, to make them last longer, to reuse them in some way. That's so cool, and it looks beautiful. Like, if I had just sewn this patchwork together and not quilted over it in the Kanta method, it'd be a pretty piece of patchwork, wahoo! But the addition of the stitching is what really makes it look special, I guess? Which is like, no surprise, I'm preaching to the choir for all the quilters out there. The stitching, I think, is just as big a part of quilting as like the patchworking together. But then, like on this one, just the addition of one extra stitch to create these patterns, it looks so cool. I do think the pattern would have stood out a lot more, of course, if I had squished my lines together the way that they were in the example. I'm glad I didn't do that. If it had been a pleasant fabric to stitch on and I wanted to keep going for like a year and keep working on this piece, yeah, I could have done crammed together lines, but I'm happy to be done with this example and this piece of fabric. And then the third method, which I'm so excited about, I haven't touched it again since we last talked, which was like a month ago. But I think this is the one that most fascinated me in the first place, this idea of using running stitch to fill areas and to add color or to just add texture. It really was the most fascinating one to me, and so I can't wait to continue working on this. I know it's going to be so enjoyable. I'm going on another trip in like a week. I'm gonna go catch up with Matt on tour and spend some time with him. So this one is going with me, and I will actually have some time to work on it this time, for sure. So of course, this is not getting finished in this video. As I said, this is my long-term project. I hope that it takes me months to finish it, quite honestly. If you ever want to see the progress on it, just check on Instagram, my stories, posts. I'll post when I finish it. I'm excited for this one. Have you ever tried Kanta stitching? Do you know of any other running stitch based embroidery types from around the world? I know somebody mentioned one on a video recently, and I'm pretty sure I wrote it down, but I'm so fascinated by these cultural variations in embroidery. It's just so cool to study and to look into and to try. So, big recommend trying Kanta or Kanta-inspired stitching if you haven't already. God, see, this is the problem. I pull this out and now I want to stitch on it right now. I don't have time right now, but tonight maybe. Tonight I might do some stitching. Ooh, my head just did something weird. That's always exciting. Ooh, my nose. Ugh. Is this not exciting? Oh my god, my face is burning. Oh, don't sit on your mic. What is causing that? I worry that it's going to make me go insane. We're back on this though, because I don't think that's enough. Or blah 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 blah. Thoughts. What better way to end this compilation than to show you my current progress on the final Kanta-inspired piece. The leaves and the flamingo are finished as of right now, which means that I can go iron this piece finally and get rid of any remaining pin marks that might still be on here. This piece is far from finished though, because the goal is actually to cover the entirety of the fabric with this freehand running stitch. So now the entire background is going to get stitched over with yellow thread. The final texture is going to be so cool, but more importantly, I have so enjoyed working on this one. It's easy to pick up even if I just want to do 5 minutes of stitching. It's great to pick up if I want to keep my hands busy during a meeting. It's easy to pack up pretty small if I'm traveling anywhere. Yeah, this one's been a delight. Thank you for joining me for these 4 hours of embroidery exploration, and let me know which style of embroidery you're most hoping to see me try next. Let me know which style of embroidery you do, or haven't tried yet, or want to try, or are about to try, or are currently trying. Tell me all the things. But when this one is done, we will explore something new.